Mambo fresh.
So how far means what?
VP. Huh? Like exactly that. VP. Nyaje. How is it? How far?
So-
How are things going? Where you don't reach? How far? Can you say I day?
And then Ide means
I'm cool. I'm there. But
I'm alive.
if you never reach, not talk say you day.
Eh?
Uh,
If you never reach, you don't day.
if you never reach, not
So
talk say
day
you
is
day.
for those who reach.
Something like that. But
City?
you day, Sha. I see you say you day.
City?
Yes,
Do you day?
I day.
Good.
You see?
How far do you day?
No, just how far?
You know, I want me to speak in tongues, do you?
Should say how far? You day, Abi?
Yes, that very same one. My friend, I am well, and I have made a sterling effort to speak Nigerian this morning. So, having made that effort, I do not want to besmirch it even a little bit. So I'm leaving it there.
To besmirch the effort of the language.
No, language I got okay. I was given tick by the teacher. It's beyond that.
Okay.
Knowing this particular cloth only fits this garment, so I'm leaving it there.
No wahala.
Yes.
Okay. I'm happy to see two of you today. Are you both well? Yes.
We are both well.
Good.
Yes. And we are both here. Today in history, a number of things happened today in history. The Standard has this and the Nation has this. So, on this day in October, no, it can't have been.
It can't
day
have
if
been
it
on
was
this day in October.
Surely.
It can.
On this day in October.
Okay, well, with Eric, anything is possible.
45
because
years
it's the second
ago.
Monday
a
of
day
the week.
similar to this one,
No, the brother specifically said
meaning Tuesday.
on a day like this, okay, it'd be
Yes, you
Tuesday
just
in
need
October.
Yes, no, you need to look for Tuesday with a specific date like this on 20.
7th.
Yes. Then look for October.
Somewhere.
Yeah, where the 27th Tuesday.
Hit a
It's a
Tuesday.
day like this one.
Got it.
There's a photo here, page 2 of the Standard, which was taken in October 1976, capturing the chief architects of the Gamma-leaning Change the Constitution group in a meeting in Nakuru town. The gentleman here,
You know, it's interesting.
there
We,
is Keheka Kimani,
yes.
there is the late Jega Karume.
This Keheka Kimani wouldn't be the father of the current senator for Nakuru, would
He
he?
is.
He is.
Right.
Yes, there is James Gishuru and there is Paul Ngei.
James Gishuru, Minister for Defense. At one time, Minister even for Finance.
And even information at some
Yes.
point.
Yes. And then Paul Ngei, the cat with the 12 lives.
So there they were, pushing for changing of the constitution. Now, then page 18 of the Nation has another one today. In 1989, on this day, 27th of April, 1989, in an unprecedented move in independent Kenya, Parliament unanimously passed a vote of no confidence in the Vice President and Minister for Home Affairs, Dr. Josephat Jogona Karanja. The beleaguered Dr. Karanja was the only one who voted against the motion, moved by the MP for Embakasi, David Mwenje,
Mwenje.
in which he listed numerous charges against the Vice President. Yep, there's a photo of Dr. Jogona Karanja earlier.
Josephat.
Yeah, Dr. Josephat Jogona
Yes,
Karanja.
start with Josephat. If you say Jogona Karanja, you may confuse people. You start with Josephat, then you go to
Jogona and then
you go to
Karanja.
Yes.
All of them. And you can't
Yes.
just say Dr. Josephat Karanja.
Havana.
You have to say all. Sawa. So, yeah, it was on this day that it happened.
Now, do you understand why it was in August?
I understand why it was in September.
But you know, of interest is what history brings up. Yes. Tell us what history is telling us about our roads this morning. But before you do that, even tell us what history is telling us about COVID.
What is
Well.
history telling us about us? Welcome to the show. We'll have a couple of conversations today. Very, very interesting stories to cover and things that have happened. We'll also be looking at the reforms in the agricultural sector and what's happening there, especially in the tea, in the coffee sector today. And we will be looking at COVID-19 and the progress we've made. So already about 1 million people have taken the vaccine.
Yes. Let's look at global numbers really quickly, and then we look at the numbers coming from a Ministry of Health in terms of who then has received the COVID-19 vaccine in the country. So we're looking at 148,472,884 COVID-19 cases in Kenya. All right. So, I'm sorry, in the world. In Kenya specifically, very low numbers that we saw yesterday. I believe the number yesterday that we saw was 194. Let me just look at that really quickly. So now Kenya has a total of 156,981 cases having been recorded. Looking at the numbers yesterday, I believe that was 194 new cases, 21 new deaths yesterday, and still looking at efforts to ramp up vaccinations. But coming from the Ministry of Health as of yesterday, if I can just pull that up really quickly, and I cannot, but I'll give you those details in a bit because technology is not allowing. All right. So let's look at what's going on in other parts of the world, and we'll come back and look at vaccines. Israel. Now, with what they've been able to do, if we looked at the numbers of what was happening yesterday, I believe in the world, Israel was number 3 or number 4, according to data, in terms of what they've been able to do to protect their citizens from COVID-19. First time in a long time, recorded no deaths for the first time in 10 months. They're pushing on ahead in what they call a speedy vaccination drive. The last time they had 0 COVID deaths on a day was in June last year, and lockdown measures seem to have curbed a wave of infections. So it would look as though there is something that they are doing right, and having been able to break the chain. They started to restrict, or rather to relax lockdown restrictions about a month ago. And they can actually see now that it is helping. We're not saying that people are not getting sick. We're just saying that people are not dying as rapidly as they were before. So the measures that they've put in, they can actually see the fruits of that labor. It's working and it's helping. Infections are falling. Vaccination success is what is being hailed now. And the world is looking at Israel and saying they could just have reached herd immunity. All right. So lessons in the past provide for present and future manifestations, I guess.
This one, Netanyahu will ride.
He will for a while. He'll ride on this one, that's for sure. So according to some other data, Israel does hold, so as we saw yesterday, number one, 55% at that time of Israel's population had been vaccinated. They had reached last week, Thursday, 5 million vaccinations. And we're looking at a population of almost 11 million people, right? So, doing pretty well. Okay. India. Just a minute before we get to that. Okay. The US, you were asking yesterday, what is the US going to do? Biden may have heard you, because later in the day he then announced that of the 60 million AstraZeneca vaccines that they have, they are going to now contribute those 60 million, or rather distribute those 60 million, donate those 60 million to countries that need them.
Can I be a bit of a wet blanket here?
Sure.
They were never going to use them.
That's what I was going to say. It's specifically AstraZeneca. They are not using AstraZeneca to vaccinate Americans. So
even now,
they're going to give them away. It's not even approved.
On condition that their federal authorities approve this vaccine is when they can donate.
So essentially...
Stories.
Yep. Now this one, unfortunately, this science doesn't feature here. No. This is now commerce. The ugly, ugly, ugly face of commerce comes into it. Other countries that have similar stringent standards have okayed the AstraZeneca. The US now wants to determine, or wants to tell us, or to claw back some lost glory by telling us that unless and until they are ever stringent and more stringent than other regulators authorize this thing. Did they not authorize the Pfizer vaccine? Did the Pfizer vaccine not start having the same issues that the AstraZeneca had? So what is the big hoo-ha?
So why have 60 million doses of something you haven't approved?
Yes. What are you doing with it? Apart from obviously holding it. What else are you doing? It's almost sinister. You almost get the impression it's like you don't want other people to get it.
But that's what it is. Is that not what vaccine nationalism has been about recently? Is that you want to get as much as you can for yourself. Make sure, and then even if you're not going to use something, there's a certain quote-unquote glory that lies in you having, we have, okay?
Actually, from a commercial perspective, please understand, and if you think of power play, we have the vaccine, we can give it to you.
Yep.
But perhaps you should consider doing this, and the other.
The rest of the world is crumbling support for India, all right? America is still talking about, okay, you guys, we stand behind you. We stand behind India.
No, they're also making lovely statements which attribute to the president that, India also helped us in our time of need, so now it's our time to help India.
So what are they doing?
See,
did the president say now, Boris Johnson has dispatched a naval warship carrying supplies to India?
Him not joking.
Already done, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Understanding the sizable Indian population in the UK and the links that they have back home, okay. America, the more things change, the more they remain the same. Well, we'll talk here and say, it was one. If this was Trump, you'd be seeing a lot of information. Oh, this is MAGA. This is the other. Now we're just being soft about, okay, yeah, Biden has already made a statement.
By the way, the statement is they will send raw materials, okay, for COVID-19 vaccine and medical equipment and protective gear.
Which is the issue here.
They will send.
For a long time, one of the reasons why we're having challenges in India is because some of the raw material that's required in production of vaccines has been blocked by the US.
Yes, it has.
And Biden is still saying we will.
Anyway, decisions such as the one they're making have been made before them in terms of such crisis. And then history has made them pay dearly for taking that wrong step at a time when you should have done something else.
Okay, so can we look very quickly then at vaccinations for the country, Kenya? Real quick, from the Ministry of Health, we understand that this is Global Vaccination, rather Immunization Week, and then there's a lot of hype being put around this. So we've been talking about malaria, we've been talking about, of course, COVID-19, and looking at trying to make sure that everybody gets vaccinated. Nairobi leads with the counties with the highest number of vaccinated persons at 256,282. As of the 25th of April, a total of 1,080,000 doses had been distributed. Okay. Nairobi leads with the highest number of those vaccinated. 826,000 still is what we're looking at. 826,617 had been vaccinated against COVID-19 across the country. So we still have about 280,000 to go. So all the vaccines having been received a couple of months ago have been distributed. Nothing is being held anywhere. Now, I guess we're counting down in terms of then what is going to be given out in terms of a dose, right? So there's your question. Just under 900,000 have been administered so far in the country.
Okay. Time for a break then to take a look at the weather. We are already live streaming on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. As we take this break, jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. This is a website that gives you an opportunity to look at all the jobs that have been advertised on Standard Media. Jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. Various advertisers, various people who are looking for employees have posted them here. Go to jobs and then you subscribe for job alerts via email or SMS, and you'll see many jobs that are relevant to you being shared with you. Paint sales executive is still up. Office assistant in Mombasa branch, communications associates, philanthropy manager, purchasing manager, regional senior counsel, mechanical engineer assistant, database and information manager, quality manager, social media marketing manager, and many others. Jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. Good morning. (24/7) around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
It's time to answer questions that are worthwhile. The Big Quiz Show is here. Register to play from the comfort of your home by SMSing the word JOIN to 23774. Then watch the live show on KTN every Sunday from 8 p.m. where you could have a chance to win a mealie. The fastest and most accurate answers are guaranteed to win. The Big Quiz Show, Sundays at 8 p.m. only on KTN. The realest and craziest couple are now on your screens. Terrence and Chebi are bringing you top celebrities and trendsetters on Thursday Night Live. It's double the fun and double the laughter every Thursday at 10 p.m. on KTN Home.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning at 17. It's going to go to highs of 24 today. 50% chance of rain and early on this morning. It's cloudy in Nyeri at 14, highs of 24 and lows of 15. Cloudy conditions in Nakuru at 15, highs of 25. 22 will be the high in Eldoret today. It's mostly cloudy at 13. Mostly cloudy conditions in Kisumu at 19, highs of 29. Coming back down to lows of 19. It's mostly cloudy in Kakamega this morning at 16, highs of 28. 31 will be the high recorded in Mombasa today. It's raining this morning at 26. Rain showers also in Malindi at 26, highs of 31. 26 will be the high in Kampala. It's 19 degrees and mostly clear. Light rain in Dar es Salaam at 24. It continues through the day. Highs of 30, lows of 25. Clear conditions in Johannesburg at 15. It'll come down to a low of 12. 33 will be the high in Lagos, where it's cloudy at 27. It's clear in Kinshasa at 25. Highs of 33, lows of 24. Lows will be 8 recorded in Beijing. It's sunny at the moment at 21 going towards afternoon. And clear conditions in Paris at 5. It'll come down to a low of 6 later, highs of 19. Clear conditions in London as well at 4, highs of 15. And it's clear in New York on Monday night. It's 12 degrees. It'll go to highs of 16 and lows of 8.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
20
94.4
minutes
Spice
after
FM,
6 o'clock.
Nairobi.
Many people already online.
That's true. Tuned in from County 032. That's where Cyprian Mwaura is and says, morning Watuangu. How's your morning coming through? It's okay. Glad to have you in the room, sir. Rogers Light 001. He's tuned in from Mombasa. Abu Mashar Issa. Good morning, guys. Looking forward to interesting conversations. Shall we? Yes, we shall. Charity Mina. It's been a while, Charity. Where have you been? Tuned in from Nakuru. Good morning, Spice. Watching from Thika Road. Baraka Tele. That's Gasheri. Good morning, Gasheri. Robert Mbogo is tuned in this morning from Mombasa. Joseph Hightowers. Good morning, team. Good morning to you. Robert Kiragu. Good morning. Tuning from Lanette in Nakuru County. And Sprash Promoter Uganda tuned in this morning. Auda Ginger City in Uganda. And Alex Kipto tuned in this morning from Moisbridge, Uasin Gishu County. And guess what? Beda Ashley's tuned in from Macha. Good morning, guys. Yes.
Karibuni kila mtu. City. Today's proverb.
A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse to the grave.
A fly that has no one
corpse.
to advise it. What are you saying, please?
Yes.
Don't put words in my words.
Hey, my good Lord. Okay.
Say again. A fly.
It's a morbid week. A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse. Not corpse. Corpse.
Follows Marehemu
Yes.
to the grave.
Yes. Follows Hayati to the grave.
Okay.
Hey, okay. Looking at the headlines then.
So, on the front page of the Standard, 2022, a headache for MPs and MCAs. Okay. A section of the Elections Act 2012, which locks out aspirants who do not have a degree and whose implementation was postponed in 2017, is set to take off in next year's poll. So, there could be a bit of a problem. according to this report. And it's covered on page 8 and 9, this story on the Standard. Will MPs again suspend the degree requirement in 2022? Remember it was, and then the last election, they said, okay, let's suspend this for now. We'll talk about it later, and we'll implement this come 2022. Well, 2022 is faster coming. And leaders eyeing MP and MCA positions but are not degree holders risk being locked out of the 2022 general election. Section 22 of the Elections Act 2012, which is expected to be enforced in the next elections, will make it mandatory for aspirants to have a university degree to get clearance by the Electoral Commission to contest. Implementation of the law was postponed in the 2017 polls. Currently, the Elections Act only makes it mandatory for the presidential aspirant and running mate, as well as governors and their running mates, to be degree holders. Although the implementation date of the law has been postponed several times, it is now set to take effect after the National Assembly in 2017 amended Section 22 of the Elections Act that prescribes minimum academic qualifications for elected leaders at both levels of government. Some lawmakers do not meet the requirement and could end up being barred from defending their seats. I'm going to quote from the Act, and what it says is a person may be nominated as a candidate for an election under this Act only if that person is qualified to be elected to that office under the Constitution and this Act, and holds, in the case of a Member of Parliament, a degree from a university recognized in Kenya, or in case of a Member of County Assembly, a degree from a university recognized in Kenya. So, they had postponed it to 2022. It looks like that law is going to come round before to have the election in place 2022.
Okay, so what's
And
the
they're
argument
protesting.
here?
They're protesting. MCAs are protesting the plans to implement the law, saying the proponents of the BBI, birthed through the handshake between Uhuru and Raila, have promised to remove the requirement by amending the section. They don't like this very much, and they're saying that it should be removed. They said they would oppose the implementation of the law as it was not subjected to public participation before enforcement.
Okay. So, if we look at the number of people, okay, according to the fact check by the Standard, there are 270 MPs with at least one degree. How many MPs do we have in total?
How many?
MPs.
390. Huh? Yeah.
Okay. 217 MPs with at least one degree, 140 with a diploma, 134 with a master's, 34 with PhD.
So if you have a PhD, you definitely have an undergrad.
So we are saying out of the 270 who have a degree, at least 134 have a master's degree, and 34 of them, 25 have completed their PhDs, and 34 are on the path to doing this, right? Some of them, like this particular MP called Patrick Kariuki Mariru, has 3 master's degrees, Master of Science in Divinity, Master of Science in Public Policy, Master of Science in Sustainable Development. Okay, so what is the issue about having a degree qualification for a legislator? What are the roles of an MP? Legislate, oversight, and represent. So in those 3 roles, which one requires academic qualification at a level of a degree, and why?
What does a degree offer a person? What is it in a degree? Why not a diploma? Why not a certificate? As you move up that particular academic ladder, what you're subjected to is a larger body of materials to study and to understand. So the theory behind this thinking is that your mental capacity and understanding in your chosen or preferred subject area will be expanded.
Right.
Okay? But alongside this, that level of learning is supposed to imbue with critical thinking, because you're being introduced to the thinking of other people. That's what reading material is all about. what other people have thought and said on the same subject cumulatively over a period of time. And if it's a speciality, then you look for people who have talked about that particular subject over a period of time. That's what you're doing, really. But the whole idea is not that you just take in what other people have said. The idea is, at the end of it, you can come up with your own idea based on what you've understood. That's where now people go for what you call a master's and
degree.
probably a PhD. Okay? So, and you have to do what other people have done by following that particular trajectory in supporting this particular thinking of yours. But the thinking has to be, the idea has to be new. It has to be something that no one has ever thought of. Now, that's the tricky bit. However, to answer your question, I had to ask the question because if you are going to legislate, should you not have a certain level of understanding to legislate, to even understand these laws so that you can actually effectively legislate? But the question is, yes, what level of education must you have? What level of education guarantees that you'll be able to understand these things? Is it a certificate level? Is it a diploma level? Or is it a degree level?
So if you get to that level, let's say a high education, that and at that point of lawmaking, what is your education going to help you with in terms of lawmaking? Your understanding what
Yes.
the implication of every
Yes.
aspect of that particular law?
Sure,
How
critical
about
thinking
life
comes into
experience?
play here.
Because you're legislating for people. How about life experience?
Well, life experience.
How about that understanding that this is, because the bigger thing here is that you're representing the people on taxation, representing the people on this and the other. How about just that experience and knowing this is Vituko ground?
that
Somebody who's very much in touch with ground.
that Vitukwa ground may actually be far more important than this academic learning at certain levels. Because what we are referring to as academic learning is born out of that Vitukwa ground knowledge that you speak of. In fact, research is based on that. You find out it existed, you just hadn't found it, you hadn't collected the information to then make it a body of information that you can refer to as whatever it is you want to refer it to as. Yes. So I think it also is worthwhile. That, I think, plays into now the age at which you are allowed to do certain things.
All right.
Because that age allows you to experience the world, and you have a certain body of experience which should enable you to make certain critical decisions in, should we say, a better and a more informed way. Yes.
If you were to say, would you say that progressively we've had parliaments that have more and more university graduates every election cycle?
Actually,
Anecdotally.
this one, anecdotally speaking, is probably by far the most educated parliament we've ever had.
Okay.
And we know other adjectives that we can attach to this particular parliament.
I was
as well,
about to
don't we?
ask you. So, in terms of performance,
Has it affected?
in legislation, in policy making, in representation, would you say that Parliament has increasingly become better and more efficient, creating better laws, better policies?
If we were to speak broadly, we would say they have become better at representing themselves. So they have deviated completely from what it is that actually took them to Parliament in the first place. That one they've done extremely well. And just in case we thought that they might change, they keep confirming it to us. Yes. So in that aspect, yes. But in terms of a Parliament that theoretically could understand our Constitution better, it doesn't get better this particular Parliament. But in understanding it, what have they done? In any instance, we find them subverting that very, very Constitution that they were supposed, they swore to uphold. So, again, the argument as to whether you actually require that degree, I am with the people who say it is not necessary, actually.
Perhaps you should have this conversation a bit at great depth.
Yes,
right?
I am with the people who say it is not necessary.
And see, right, what does a university degree do in terms of improving the capacity of your representative, both in those houses of assembly, at the county level and at the national level? Kenya's biggest conversation continues shortly, 6:30. Remember, generationnextchallenge.com. It's what is the Kenya National Challenge about? Well, the Kenya National Challenge is where you can empower your students from kindergarten to grade 11th to acquire deeper understanding of math, computer science, robotics, and everything else, and also connecting math to life. So that whole thing of understanding what math is all about and then applying it, even in future when they become lawmakers and policymakers. Start now. It'll be good and worth your while. GenerationNextChallenge.com. Log in and register your child.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Have you seen them? Am I live?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Everyone in Wasingishu was asking me what channel is SpiceFM.
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have
What
you.
a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
Traffic.
All right, we're looking at a little bit of traffic on Mombasa Road today, and it's getting thinner and thinner as we go along. Although from SGR today, section of that road has been closed off, so that means that it is very slow today. It's going to take some time to get off of Mombasa Road today. We'll have to keep an eye on that one as you get out towards the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. Okay, so what else is going on? Decongestion strategies is what we're being told is going to happen by the NMS in the next couple of weeks on the roads. We're going to see how that will play out. Coming off Jogo Road into the CBD, it is slow, but it's moving. Coming off of Thika Road as well. As you get to the Pangani underpass, taking some time, but it looks all right. So we're just getting up. Traffic is just waking up. We'll have an eye on this and see how it opens up in the next couple of minutes. SpiceFM KE, get in touch with us on Twitter. Text us on 40127.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings.
24 minutes to 7 o'clock. Apparently, there's a big fallout. So, first, members of the National Assembly have been recalled to come for a special sitting tomorrow and Thursday to discuss the BBI Amendment Bill. The Joint Committee of the National Assembly and Senate has completed its report, and there are two reports that have come out of that meeting of theirs. One, a majority report signed by, among others, Otiende Amolo, James Orengo, and others, and Senior Counsel Okongo Mogeni, basically says there's this provision for creation of 70 new constituencies. The schedule, as it's written in the BBI bill, is unconstitutional. And they say this is unconstitutional. It's usurping the powers of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission that give it the power to delineate. It's called what? Doing that thing of constituencies, creating new boundaries for constituencies, delimiting constituencies.
And here I was thinking it was delineating.
Delineating and delimiting. So they have come up, a majority of members of that committee have come up with that report, and they've said this particular bit is unconstitutional. Then members of the National Assembly who were allied to, who were members of ODM, addressed a media conference yesterday, and they said, all those stories you're hearing, this is a ploy by people who want to derail the BBI. We are going to support the BBI regardless of what they bring to the House. Apparently, there's another minority report which is being spearheaded by Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja and supported by 6 members of that joint committee, which is describing as extremist the finding that the schedule is unconstitutional. The allocation of the constituencies as set out in the proposed second schedule of the bill remains the proposal or the idea of the promoters, and there can be no justification for Parliament to purport to oust this proposal on grounds of legal technicalities. This would amount to usurping the constituent sovereignty and sovereign power which belongs to the people. That is what Sakaja is saying. He's saying, look, okay, it doesn't matter what you think is constitutional, is unconstitutional, blah, 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 blah. This is what has been brought by the promoters of the bill. Okay? If you try and bring in issues of, it's unconstitutional, we should amend it, you're basically going against the sovereign will of the people who supported this. This is a popular initiative, remember. It's by the citizens. It should go as it is. He goes further to say, What the promoters of the BBI have proposed cannot be conclusively defined as a delimitation. This is an allocation of constituencies, and in order for the same to take effect, the Constitution in Article 89 applies, save for Clause 4, which has been proposed to be ousted. Consequently, the IEBC still has the powers to basically go ahead and say, this is the boundary of this extra constituency. All they have done, the proponents of this thing, is to propose 70 new constituencies and say a new constituency, 10 new constituencies, for example, can come up in Nairobi. Now it's for you, the IEBC, to carve out the 10. You still have your job.
They do. You know, what I like about this entire debate is something that I have repeatedly mentioned, and that is the working of our Constitution. This is our Constitution in action, all right? People have a view, they express it. Senate has a view, they express. They even produce documents. Parliament has a view. However, the argument that Sakaja has brought forth, all right, I think trumps all these other arguments. And his argument is actually supported by Kamodo Waiganjo, a known constitutional lawyer. And he has written this on page 5 of the Star. There's a commentary that he has written. And after saying everything he has to say, which agrees with what Sakaja is saying, this is what he concludes by saying. I understand what the MPs are saying, such as the power to determine constituencies lie with the IEBC. But people can decide otherwise. One may argue that it is wrong, but ultimately it will be constitutional if the people pass the amendment. Argue as much as you like. The sovereign power lies with the people. So you can jump up and down, you can say what you like, you can do what you want. And I read it and I thought to myself, you know, this is a sublime argument.
Okay, my friend. Are you saying that the people are not bound by their constitution that they've passed?
The people are the ones who can determine what to do with the constitution ultimately.
All right. But in this particular case, the people are not amending the constitution to remove the powers from the IEBC. They're basically just saying, have new constituencies.
What the argument has been is that
this is a schedule. It's not amending.
This BBI is all about amending the constitution.
Yes.
In a big way, but pretending it is just the BBI. And the argument, remember, that's a conclusion that I'm reading. He has actually laid out his argument very, very, very clearly. And he says, you see, let me put in arithmetical terms. He's saying 1 + 1 = 2. 3 - 1 still equals 2. 4 - 2 still equals 2.
2 times 1?
2. It doesn't matter what you do as parliament. If it was a document that had come from Parliament, then they would have the final say in amending it and doing what they like. But since it is a people's document, it doesn't matter what Parliament says. It is completely irrelevant. And I'm saying our lawmakers know this very well. So this great push they suddenly have for relevance is really my question. What is it that the parliamentarians want? Because all this effort is not for nothing.
But
What
also,
do they want?
however, is it out of order for parliamentarians to raise concerns and say, okay, what is being proposed here goes against the dictates of the Constitution, and this is not amending the Constitution?
Those are words, sir. Words.
Because here we are, for example, we say, look at what is happening to a particular... There are other arguments here. For example, in what the members who are against this are questioning. All right? They are faulting the removal of vetting of cabinet secretaries and senior government officers, even as they called for amendments to provisions of the Judiciary Ombudsman. The MPs are saying it's unconstitutional that the Judicial Service Commission will have powers to take disciplinary action against a judge even before any investigations have been conducted. They are also saying the amendment to transfer key functions of the agency of the National Police Service Commission to the Inspector General goes against the same constitution in other parts. So there are conflicts. You're introducing conflicts within the constitution.
It is good they're raising it, But it still doesn't stop it from going to a referendum.
The outcome is really, it's almost as though the outcome
That's why I
was
said
already predetermined.
it is good for us that we hear these arguments and we understand them. It's good. We are operationalizing the Constitution in a way that I hadn't thought we would. I'm understanding and learning things. Like, I honestly didn't know just how important it was for a referendum that is people-led, is because there's nothing you can do about it. It's as simple as that. Nothing is going to a referendum. And the argument that Kamodo Waiganji also puts across is that if these amendments, whatever it is you're talking about, if it's passed in a referendum, it cannot be unconstitutional.
Okay, but can it introduce more issues and lacuna in the Constitution?
Yes, it can.
All right, so why not guard against that?
I don't think it's possible to guard against people raising issues. Can you, Eric?
No. I mean, I'm saying guard against that by saying, okay, so this is where this is what the document is saying. These are the red flags. Vote no.
But those who
don't pass it.
But those who want to vote no will present those arguments.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They should.
So these members of parliament, what you're saying is that, it's inconsequential. I don't think it's inconsequential.
This is going to a referendum.
Yes, it's going to a referendum.
Up to that point, it's inconsequential.
That's clear.
What happens in a referendum is where all the arguments that they are bringing forth can come into play.
Yes.
They can present them
And
when they want to be naysayers to the referendum.
Even if the whole parliament actually just stopped being politicians for a minute, which is impossible. But if they stopped politicking about the issue and looking at it from, handshake yes, handshake no, and look at what is the content of this bill, all right? And they agreed that, yes, there are some things in this bill that would raise more issues than solving the issues that we claim to be solving. Parliament can speak with one voice and say, guys, yes, it's coming to a referendum, but this is our advice.
They can.
It's wrong.
They can.
Our advice is this is and the other. And this is what should have happened at the county assemblies.
They can, but this is a case of the boy crying wolf too often. Parliament isn't in a position to advise anyone with any seriousness and hope that they'll be listened to. On matters that we wanted them to take a stand and we would listen, they have not taken the stand that would have helped us. So on this one, they can do what they want to do. They can offer the advice. Those who want to take the advice will. I certainly will not be among those taking that advice.
No.
I think Mother Karua should have a conversation with James Orengo and Okongo Mogeni and Otiende Amolo, and they can welcome them to Linda Katiba.
By all means, they can.
And it will be a very good move, because now we'll have people who are talking sense with one voice, saying this thing, poison chalice.
You know, you are doing very well, Eric, until you came up with this equation. That arithmetic doesn't work.
Which one?
Speaking in one voice doesn't necessarily mean you're speaking sense. It just means you're speaking in one voice.
It doesn't mean you're speaking.
The two are separate issues. In fact,
those ones, if they join Mata Karua, they'll be speaking sense.
If they
remain on the other side, they'll just be telling us to vote for this.
But
thing.
can I then ask the all-important question, are they really opposing this?
That's the thing. That's why I want them to join, so we can clearly see where they lie. 14 minutes to 7, Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Time for a quick break. We'll be back shortly.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, so Mvurya meets parties in search of coast unity. Apparently, this coastal party is still an issue, right?
Hey.
There's a fresh glimmer of hope for the elusive coast unity after Kwale Governor Salim Mvurya agreed to revive talks between fringe political parties in the region. He has now joined hands with his Kilifi counterpart Amason Kingi and Mombasa's Hassan Joho in a bid to establish a political vehicle that would assist them to negotiate with other parties. This is even as his counterparts, who were eyeing the presidency in 2022, try to consolidate support from the region. Mvurya has been holding meetings with smaller parties in search of a united support, even though it is not clear whether the three governors will support one of their own in the 2022 presidential race. His latest meeting was on Friday when he met Umoja Summit of Kenya Chairman Matano Chengo and his Shirikisho Party of Kenya counterpart Abdul Kadir Mwinyi. They sought his intervention to sustain the consultations that appeared to have hit a brick wall 2 weeks ago at a retreat in Kilifi County. So these talks for coastal party they're still quite hot.
High gear.
And the thing is, even though they do have a party, they're not sure if they're going to come together and support one candidate for 2022. That doesn't it's not a through pass to one candidate support for 2022.
This discussion will not be complete if we do not look at the power that some of the bigger parties still hold, the sway it still holds at the coast. Because there will be people who will join this unity forum and want to form one party or be part of it, but there are people who will stick with the parties that they were elected on or the parties they have supported all along. Because remember, those older parties are more established and they have the machinery that would support you. This one is still in the making and the elections are next year.
Apart from KANU, which is another older party that is more than 10 years old?
No, not 10 years old, just established. No.
As long as it's been there
it's
for a while.
established, yes. So, KANU, Jubilee, ODM,
Wiper.
Yes.
Shirikisho is older.
Shirikisho is definitely older, but you see, yes.
Okay. Short of saying what you wanted to say. Salim Mvurya goes on to say that they will continue to talk and meet. Other regions are uniting, and there is no mistake for us to also unite. Other regions have united, and so he's not understanding why it should be such a sore spot when you hear about Coast coming in and uniting as a party. According to what he's saying, what's the hullabaloo about? We said we're going to form a unified front. Everybody else has done it and nobody shouts.
That is not entirely true.
Well,
it's not a hullabaloo. Perhaps he should put in place a team that would study Western Kenya and understand why all these years Western Kenya has never been able to come together. Okay, they are called Luyas. There are those who argue there's no such thing, but that's what they're called.
There's no such thing as Luyas.
They are far more populous, all right? Now, why have they not? A study in understanding why they have not come together would help the coast probably overcome certain hurdles that region has had and might help them form their own unity party.
No, at least even if they haven't come together, there are parties that you hear and you can tell their roots are in Western Kenya. Ford Kenya. Now there is Amani National Congress. New Ford Kenya. All those parties, at least you know, coastal. Western. Now, you want also the coast to have a party that, says this is our base.
Eric, what are you saying? Those parties, coastal parties exist.
But now they want to increase their base. And they're saying the thing about us increasing our strength is by coming together. Let's come together and form a giant party, giant movement. This may work better for us.
A giant party or a coastal party is desired. It would be a good thing to have a coastal party. It would be a useful thing to have a coastal party because the thing that sort of party does, it gives you a stronger voice than they currently have. And arguably, you're not dependent on anybody other than your own people. And when you put forward an argument, when you negotiate from a position of, should we say, strength. It is desired. I personally think it would be an excellent thing.
But these leaders are focusing more on trying to explain themselves instead of coming together.
This is what I'm trying to say because, and then even as that discussion is going on, the discussion that isn't had who's going to be kingpin. Okay? And on that one, they don't agree. And they won't agree. Taita Taveta is completely different from Kwale, just as much as Kwale is different from Lamu and Lamu is different from Tana River. How do you marry these differences? And Kilifi, then is Kilifi. How do you marry these differences? Because each of those counties functions as a separate entity and unit. And even within those counties, there needs to be a certain unity. And the one place where that unity seems to have been found, in Kwale, we seem to have it. Taita Taveta has a semblance of it. Tana River has a semblance. Lamu has a semblance. Mombasa is cosmopolitan. So it has different issues altogether. But if the leaders who come from these counties can't bring their people together, how on earth do they think they're going to form a coastal unified?
By bringing their people
And they should. They honestly should.
So they can start by bringing their people together. They can start by bringing their people together and then start to iron out these differences.
Many of the people who present themselves as leaders by virtue of their being governors are divisive. There are people who support them, there are people who don't. There are people who feel if you don't sort out these issues, it's unfortunate and it's tragic that the coastal people will fail to have the one thing that they need, and that is that unity and that oneness that would really help the region.
Perhaps now forming this party is one of the steps towards that.
Let's stay on the coast. I have two stories. One is from the coast and the other one is from northeastern. In Tana River, the county government has embarked on a 100 million shillings dam in Waldena in Galole sub-county. Officials are saying this 230,000 cubic meter dam is the ultimate solution to the perennial water crisis in the arid region. The water director, Felix Mumba, took journalists there and said the dam will be complete by mid-next year. They first thought of pumping water from the river to the villages, but we found it more cost-effective to build a dam, according to Mr. Mumba. He said the large number of livestock coupled with scarce water and pasture is the main cause of violent conflict. Yes, this is well known. The dam, with a surface of about 9,000 square meters, has been designed to generate hydroelectric power, facilitate irrigation, ecotourism, fishing, and to provide clean water for domestic consumption. One major project, 100 million shillings.
And he's saying it will solve this problem of conflict.
It will.
Perennial water shortage.
It will go far in alleviating some of these issues that we have. Perennial water shortage.
Has the Tana River ever dried up?
You see, the Tana River is on one place. Tana River County is huge.
Yes.
Several kilometers away.
Eco-distributaries ya hiyo river.
Okay. Hazitoi maji. Hizo zinaleta tu maji. How many rivers, how many streams are there in Tana River that feed into the major river?
Not many, really.
You see? So there are people in Tana River who actually don't have access to water.
Yes.
So they are far from the river.
I think it's...
So they wanted to pump this water from the river and take it to villages, and they thought, wait, why don't we just create a dam?
I think it's a good plan. I think it's a good plan. But the cohesive nature of Tana River depends on understanding the diversity of people who actually live in Tana River and the diversity of their cultures and their livelihood. You have people who are agricultural, they are fishermen, there are people who are pastoralists. I mean, it's... And if you look at the division of the problems, it arises from those two things. These are pastoralists, these are farmers. Yes. And their view of the natural resources that are available somewhat differs. And it's in these differences that you constantly have these clashes. Yes.
My second story is a governor who's in the soup because he has ceded authority to his wife, according to the members of his county assembly. For the second time in 8 months, Governor Mohammed Abdi Mohamud is finding himself in trouble with Mandera Wajir MCAs once again filing a motion to impeach him. At least 34 ward reps have signed the motion sponsored by one of them, who accuses Mohamud of corruption, gross misconduct, and abuse of office. Mohamud's county is accused of delegating power to his wife, Keira Omar. The governor has allowed his wife to literally run county affairs as the de facto authority. He ceremoniously officiates and signs off where necessary for decisions that she has unilaterally made based on her own wishes and judgment without due regard to any law. This is according to the MCA who moved this motion, Abdullahi Isaac. He says, it's an open secret in Wajir County and far beyond its borders that Mrs. Keira Omar is the supreme leader of the county, and it is always her way or the highway. This has brought ridicule and disrepute to the office of the governor.
So what's the problem?
She was not elected.
Got it.
People elected Mr. Omar, and then Mrs. Omar is the one who is running
the show.
People elected Mr. Abdi Mohamud, but now Ms. Omar is the one who's running the show.
Yes, but surely...
Allegedly.
Do the laws prevent him from electing his wife to assist him?
Yes.
Nope.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
How?
You cannot cede the authority of a governor.
But how on earth has he ceded authority?
She's the one who's making all the decisions. The decisions of the
How
county...
do they know she's the one who's making all the decisions?
The decisions of the county executive shall be made by governor, deputy,
Yes.
and at most 10 CECs.
Eric,
That's it. It doesn't say spouse or friend,
let me ask Eric.
advisor.
Let me ask. The evidence that she's the one who's making these decisions.
What is this?
Yes, I mean...
They'll
what is
adduce
necessary?
it. When they move this motion, they'll adduce it. They'll bring that evidence to show.
Does she sign things? Does she give administrative authority?
Does she hold meetings?
Does she hold meetings or call meetings and make decisions?
He's the one who comes
outrightly?
to sign ceremoniously.
And he comes to sign and says, my wife said we should do this.
Everybody knows. You want to talk to the...
everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
Within Wajir and beyond.
Everybody knows.
Yes.
Okay.
This is public knowledge.
So everybody wants to remove the governor now?
Yes.
All right. And they'll provide the evidence?
No, of course, the governor and his close associate have people on their side as well.
And these people also have wives who are telling them what to do.
Yes.
You can only assume.
Well, if that is the argument, then we can assume that they have to have something in common. Sure. So those whose wives tell them what to do are on one side.
On one side.
And
the others who are not women
think they tell their wives what to do are on the other side.
Hey, my goodness.
This is going to be an interesting one, though. And what happens, what comes out of it. So far, what we know is that somebody has moved to a court outside Wajir. I think they've gone to, is it Meru or Embu? And they have obtained an injunction. So the county assembly is not supposed to proceed with this motion yet, until that matter has been sorted out in that other jurisdiction.
Which is not in Wajir.
Which is not in Wajir. Beauty of democracy, isn't it?
No, it is. It is. We live and learn every single day.
Keep it right here. We have more conversations in the next hour. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. The Situation Room will be live on KTN Home and will also be live online as well as being live on SpiceFM. The issue is qualification for MCAs, members of parliament, members of the Senate. What is the minimum qualification that you think they should have? Good morning, it's 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
All right, so let's talk about what's going on in the CBD. According to the Executive Office of the President, Nairobi Metropolitan Services, the new Nairobi Railway Station frontage test dropping will start from today at the Green Park Terminal, which is a former Luna Park. And that's from today between 6 a.m., which has already started an hour in now, until 9 a.m. So vehicles that would ordinarily have dropped people in another area then will come from the Nairobi railway station and drop them at this new Green Park terminal. So they're testing it out this morning. You get on a public service vehicle, you're being dropped at Luna Park. Don't worry about that. It's testing to see how they will transition from the old terminus to the new one. So you'll be dropped between 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock this morning. You'll be taken to a new terminal. So just be aware of what that is. NMS is trying to see how this will work out. So let's keep an eye on how that opens up for today. All right, coming off of Mombasa Road into the city. Slow, but it's moving, not too terrible. We're probably going to get well into traffic hour past 8 o'clock. But we're going to keep an eye on this. Coming off Jogo Road, we're looking at Outer Ring where it's also slowed down just a little bit. Coming off Thika Road as well, it is a bit slow. But these are the musings of Tuesday morning traffic. We'll keep an eye on things and see how that opens up. Kenya Ferry Services tell us that the services of the ferry are up and working, so we have no problem with that. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. Thank you very much for joining us. Those who are tuning in now on KTN Home, you'll be with us until 9 a.m. Experience radio on your TV set. CT Muga, what is today's proverb?
A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse to the grave.
So it's been arrested?
This is not COPS as in police. This is CORPSE, corpse, as in body of dead individual.
Marehemu.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Say it again.
All right.
Say it again.
Okay. A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse to the grave. This is a Gambian proverb. Yes.
Right. Okay. So, the headline of the Standard this morning. 2022 headache for MPs and MCAs. A section of the Elections Act 2012 which locks out aspirants who don't have a degree and whose implementation was postponed in 2017 is set to take effect in next year's poll. So, this is what happened. 2010, people went, a majority voted yes to the Constitution. Constitution was promulgated. Constitution took effect. And it says you shall have these particular elected positions from MCA going all the way to the top, the president. It says that the president and the governors, those who hold executive positions, must have a degree. The law is then enacted by members of the National Assembly. And it says that the Elections Act says that so someone to be elected as a member of the county assembly or a member of the National Assembly shall have at least a degree from a university recognized in Kenya. That is for somebody to be a member of parliament, and this member of parliament is basically National Assembly or Senate, or member of county assembly. You must have a degree. Then what happened? They suspended this and said, okay, so this one shall not take effect from 2017. Let it take effect from subsequent elections. Subsequent is coming next year. Now, there's a whole conversation again on, so does it mean that if you do not hold a degree, you cannot vie to be an MCA in your ward or a member of parliament, member of National Assembly, assuming that the BBI does not pass, member of the Senate, or a woman rep in your county, if you do not have a degree? Brings in the whole conversation of, so why must you have at least a university degree from this so-called recognized university in Kenya for you to be a people's representative? There are those who have raised this issue over and over again. County Assembly's Forum Chairperson Dego Wahome says they'll oppose the implementation of this law as it was not subjected to public participation. But also he says the issue here is that this goes against the Constitution and Article 1 of the Constitution, which says that the sovereign power of the people, the sovereign power belongs to the people, and all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this constitution. And it says, now you're basically trying to stifle how people shall exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their elected representatives by saying it's either directly or through certain caliber of elected representatives. Does it go against the principle of the Constitution? Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. said those opposing the law would once again scheme to have it suspended if there is no serious movement towards ensuring the Elections Act is amended. The County Assembly's Forum actually has already given instructions to lawyers, and they are expecting this will go to court. Okay? And he says, look, I was there when this law was being written, and there's a reason why it was being written. There was a reason why this clause was actually introduced on the minimum qualification for an elected leader who sits in any assembly to have at least university background. The question this morning is, does it matter?
I think when we're looking at critical thinking and then what a degree allows you to do, or further education then allows you to do, it's coming off the premise that there's some importance that has been placed on it. That the critical thinking that you do get once you're in a situation whereby you're able to open up your mind and then bounce your ideas off other people who may have been in that particular field, what it does is that it gives you a certain kind of mental elevation that, probably you would not have received, or you would not have been able to outside of that setting. And I think it is upon that premise and then this requirement is then set. And to say that, all right, can you go from primary to secondary and then even raise it up on another level? I think that is where this requirement was then being made from. Because you can't compare the education you get at that level to that which you got in primary school or even in secondary school. Whereas you were mastering the subject matter and mastering formula and things like this, you then get to the point whereby you're able to think critically with the information that you have. How then will you then be able to apply it? And I think that requirement is the importance is what was now being put into that requirement. Mm-hmm. And that is what is being looked at. It's like having a ammunition in the chamber. That's what it is that it gives you something to fall back on in the future in terms of information and to be able to use as a toolkit to be able to use later on in life. Do you have the basics? Yes, but this is like a finishing that you would use later on. And I think that is where it's coming from. You're looking at the entire legislation, oversight, representation of an entire people placed on the shoulders of somebody who maybe whose mind has not been expanded to that critical thinking. And they're saying without that, then perhaps we don't want you to be in a position of leadership per se. That's where it's coming from.
When you look at the Senate and the lower house in this country, one of the things that is a key part of the composition of both those bodies are committees that they have. Now, these are committees that are set up to look into various issues that are that matter to the formation of this particular country that we call Kenya. Represented rather by the various ministries that we have. So are we saying, for instance, that if somebody is elected or appointed to a committee, then of necessity, they must have a specific knowledge to be that? Let me be specific and say, if you are in the committee of parliament that deals with roads, must you have an engineering degree? If you are in the committee of health, must you be a doctor or must you have some health information? And it goes on, whether it's agriculture, must you? Mm-hmm. And the answer would be, it would be useful to have people who actually have that knowledge. But must everyone in that committee have that knowledge?
No, not necessarily.
Yes. So, if then we understand something as basic as that, then must every member of parliament then necessarily have a degree? Let me tell you why I'm actually forwarding my argument. This is what I'm saying. I'm saying that within parliament there will be people who will be elected because people like them. And an additional attribute is they may have a degree. They may even have a high degree. They may even have a master. They may even have a PhD.
Yeah.
But they're not elected because of their PhD or master's or degree. They're elected because people want them.
Yes.
Now, such individuals, when you have these committees and you want expertise, then such people should be taken into those committees to assist. For instance, when we look at the committees that deal with accounts, must all those people be CPA holders? No, they don't. However, there will be people who have finance backgrounds, who have accounting backgrounds within parliament. the natural process of selection by which people get elected, you will have people of varying backgrounds elected into parliament. It is the choice of the people. So I'm arguing that if you then limit it to just people who are degree holders, what you're saying is you are actually controlling and limiting the choices that people would have in choosing their leaders.
You're trying to shape how they think. But listen to what Opio Wandai, who is the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, is saying. We need to enhance the capacity of our legislative assemblies to perform their constitutional functions. The level of education is a key factor. Not everybody should struggle to be in parliament or county assembly. Don't struggle. Others can exercise leadership elsewhere. It's a matter of choice.
That's elitist thinking. And it's an elitist argument of somebody who probably has those qualifications already, determining and more or less condescendingly telling the others, look, why don't you just take some of those lower things that are equal to your level of knowledge?
Your cattle dip.
Yes.
Or Farmers Union.
Or Fathers Union or Church Committee or, look, Chairman of School Board of Management sort of like thing. And yet, these very people are the people who would-be politicians, wannabe MPs and MCAs will go to, because these are opinion leaders in their community. Why are they opinion leaders? There's something they have which is not the level of education that people look up to. Now, if you put this limitation, you've already axed these people out. And that, in my opinion, is interfering with their very fundamental rights.
But then also, let's look at the other side of the argument, all right? Those three key roles of a member of parliament. Representation,
yes.
Legislation,
yes.
Oversight.
Yes.
On the matter of legislation and oversight, you need to have some certain just basic understanding and to be able to read and understand what is presented before you. So you can also argue from that point of knowledge. Basically, this is a piece of legislation that has been brought before Parliament, all right? And the piece of legislation comes in various, in sections and all, and clauses. If you're just looking at it and thinking, so what are they saying? They're saying that we shall increase tax. No, we are not going to increase tax. But if you are able to understand beyond what the basic reading of this is, and understand holistically this is the proposal that has been brought before this House, then you shall argue well. You shall argue better. That's what at the point where you shall say, I propose amending this particular clause, deleting this particular word, and inserting this particular word instead.
Because
this
is the effects that it would then be able to have on this particular circumstance or situation by virtue of this deletion or this acceptance, right? And why are you able to mature your thinking to that level? Through what processes will you get to that then would allow you to say, all right, we're not just looking at 1+1, but we're looking at what this product could actually do. The sum of these two, what could it actually have? And I'm saying that the process through which you get this kind of education is not something that you get in secondary school. It's not something that you get in high school only. You move on. Now, should it only be set at a degree? No, because it's possible that when you're doing even certificate courses or even diploma courses, you go through this kind of elevated critical thinking. It happens at a higher level. And I'm saying that it is necessary to have a higher level of education where that process of critical thinking and being able to adapt to and change through situations is necessary when you're dealing with a leader who is put in a position of legislation, oversight, and or representation. It is necessary. It is important.
So what then do we do with people who have the aptitude, and there are many, but who for some reasons beyond their control were not able to get that higher education? Not that they didn't meet the master. They did, but they couldn't. You see, understanding these details that we're speaking of that are complex has to do with one's intelligence. And are you saying a degree is a measure of intelligence? Not necessarily.
No, it's not.
So I am saying, is there another way of ensuring that somebody acquires that knowledge? If someone is in parliament, are you saying that in 5 years, if someone is in parliament, they are not going to figure out how this thing actually works and how these things are done?
Actually, I would bet that very many people who are elected to parliament for the first time have to go through a lot of training just to understand the standing orders. Just the standing orders, the rules that govern business in this house.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
And it doesn't matter whether you have a PhD or you have an undergrad degree. You basically have to go through this particular training for you to at least know, okay, at what point do I stand up? At what point do I, raise?
Sit down.
Is it a point of information, a point of order? What do I want to say? Do I just want to stand back? Wait, chini. What is it? How do I conduct myself in this house?
Like that.
Yes.
Those ones who behave like that, and they're censured.
So it's
for
important.
That behavior.
It's important for the people to be taken through this. And I hear what you're saying, CT, that yes, you may get somebody who has been elected by his constituents, her constituents, for the first time to this assembly. They will be taken through that step of this is what happens in the assembly. You learnt this in primary school, in secondary school, about the process of lawmaking. You were told, it starts from a draft, it goes to a bill, it goes to first reading, second reading, third reading, committee of the whole house, it's taken to publication, president assents, it becomes law. You have been taken through all that. Now, here it is in practice. You think that person will know? So what I have now, can I take it for first reading? Or where do I go? I have an idea. How do I draft it? That's why we have workers who work in Parliament under the Parliamentary Service Commission who understand this, and they'll take you through. This is the idea that you have. So this is how we shall draft this into a bill. This is how now we shall move from this. Now go and get support from others. You'll be taken through all these things. Do you need some elevated level of education? And what is that level that is required as a minimum? Is it a degree?
Basic secondary school education. Because not only can you read and write, you have a certain basic understanding. That is why you are then qualified at a certain level to go for this higher learning in these institutions of higher learning. There are people whom we aren't talking about. There are kind of individuals who get into politics and parliament and they continue to further their education.
Yeah.
What stops this very same parliament for bridging this discussion by saying, for you to be in a committee such as this or to be in this, you will then be required, in addition to just having come in as Mwananchi Mtukufu with your Form 4 certificate, all right, you are required, certificate, a year can get your certificate, 2 years can get your diploma. You need to have this proficiency and knowledge in ABCD so that somebody actually furthers their knowledge. What stops people from actually being required to further their knowledge when they're in parliament? Nothing stops them.
While representing the people.
Yes, nothing. People do it all the time. People work in this country and they still further their education. Because again, let me go back to what I was saying. If the people of a certain region have decided that they want to elect this particular individual, they know that his level of education was Form 4. But this is the person they want. Now, you want to deny them the opportunity to elect this individual by putting a roadblock and saying you must have a diploma or you must have. Why don't you say that we would like you upon coming to parliament to do A, B, C, D?
So you understand the importance then of this kind of education. What you're saying is that you should be able to get this education on the job, on the go. That it shouldn't,
I'm saying you can.
It shouldn't stop you from getting it.
No.
But you realize the importance of having it if you're in that position whereby you then need to, again, legislate, represent, and oversight.
Yes, you can do a good job, you'll do a better job when you expand your faculties more.
Now, these MCAs, as we see it now, are saying remove it completely.
Let us represent our
We
people.
don't need it. Do you get it?
Actually,
what they're saying is we don't need this education. Why are you saying that we need to go to school?
No, they're saying don't bring a degree.
Don't bring a degree.
Don't
we don't
bring
need
a
it.
degree.
Don't bring
which
a
is what
degree
CT is saying.
as a requirement. No, CT is saying that you should be able to get it if it's a
Not
requirement.
degree. He's saying you should be able to further your knowledge.
He's just said,
Is it not what you're saying, CT?
wow, on the job.
The two of you do know that I'm actually in this room.
Oh, are you?
And you could actually just ask me what I said.
What are you saying,
Instead of the
CT?
two of you arguing about what I said.
Can you
and
make
I'm
sure
here.
this time you're clear?
This is what I am saying. You do not need the degree. Let's start from there.
Okay.
Okay? If you use it as a precondition, whether it's in the constitution or not, you are interfering with the rights of the people who want to elect an individual. They know full well he doesn't have a degree, but he has qualities that they like and they feel this is the person who must represent them. And they know full well that that degree is not going to represent him. It is this person who's going to represent them. That's the point.
Okay.
But if you then insist that specialized knowledge is required if you're going to be a member of a committee or to be participating in certain other activities, then let that demand be once you're in parliament, we expect you to have this qualification. So you can seek that further education. Because it is possible for you to seek that further education in this particular country. But let me take this argument further. I am saying this. I am saying that the process that we are talking about is something that individual or groups of members of parliament or county assemblies can be taught. Lawmaking can be taught. And if you have a Form 4 degree, just like someone can go and start studying law, yes, I'm going to a Form 4 degree because it's a qualification, all right? You can be taught. I know this because I participated in a process that was sponsored by the Commission on Revenue Allocation and Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Among the things they were trying to do was to get assemblies and people who are involved in lawmaking in the assemblies to understand, one, the laws that they have within the assemblies and how they can make new ones.
Okay.
No one was asking anyone what their level of education was.
Okay.
Which means you can bring in people who can distill this information that appears to be complex and make it understood by everyone who is there. You can do that.
From that experience, CT,
yes,
was it clear this one has a certain level of education and this one doesn't have that kind of level?
Yes.
Well, it was clear?
Yes.
And how are you determining that?
That is why someone like myself came in. Because I am able to distill that information and simplify it without it losing meaning or import. You see, this is the law. How do you make all these people understand it as the same thing? That really was it. Because they will be elected, they'll be part of that process. How do you get them to understand it? So that when you're making laws, they understand exactly what is happening, how it's happening. I am saying this. There are bodies within this country, the NGOs within this country, who can do that job of assisting parliamentarians understand these things, of assisting local assemblies to understand. Those who don't, they can. Because it's a specific knowledge.
But then are you seeing what the challenge here is? The people have elected someone to go to parliament.
Yes.
Or to the county assembly.
Yes.
All right? And then bodies such as the Commission on Revenue Allocation are finding it difficult to basically communicate with these representatives of the people. And so they have to find ways of going to look for CT from this very busy schedule to come and give him this particular material and tell him, CT, please distill this so that we can go and it is revenue allocation for dummies.
That was at the onset of the operationalization
of CRA.
Yes, and also of the county system.
Right.
It was, yes. And they were forestalling something that they knew would be an issue.
But the people that you dealt with in the first assembly are not the same people who came in the second assembly.
Eric, even if they had degrees and they had masters and PhDs and they were in the assembly, there is a great deal they still do not know. And as we said correctly, just the standing orders, these are things they need to understand. The process of lawmaking, the people who probably have that specialized knowledge are lawyers. Okay? The bulk of the people in that parliament will need to learn and understand how it's done. So it isn't as though this degree will suddenly make it better and easier for you to legislate better. No, people learn. The process of being in parliament is a completely new experience if it's your first time. People who've been there for a longer time understand the lay of the land. But those who don't, they have to learn. So I'm simply saying, take the view that people who get into parliament will need to understand and learn certain things. And to learn and understand, you don't need a degree. That's what I'm saying.
Let's take a break and ask that question as well online. Should the law requiring MPs and MCAs to be degree holders come into effect, or should it be scrapped altogether? Is it important to have your MCA or your member of parliament or your woman rep or your senator hold a university degree? Let's hear from you. SpiceFM KE on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. As we take this break, let's remind you about jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. Log on to jobs.standardmedia.co.ke, subscribe to Job Alert, and you will be receiving latest relevant jobs from across the country on your email or on your SMS. A number of jobs that have already been advertised so far: office assistant in Mombasa, communications associate, philanthropy manager, purchasing manager, social media marketing manager, quality manager, regional senior counsel, mechanical engineer assistant, database and information manager, relationship officer in Mombasa, a head nurse for pediatric ward, a midterm review of the Kenya County Office Strategic Note 2019 to 2022 by UN Women. That's the Kenya Country Office. All these and more, jobs.standardmedia.co.ke, 26 after 7. Time for a break. We'll be back shortly.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
You better be ready. Every Friday at 7:30 p.m. only on KTN Home. It's the Shining Stars TV show moment. Get ready to be inspired. Get ready to be part of an exciting journey of discovery and learning with talented children. Get ready to be entertained by super amazing young talent. Because hii ni yetu, from our own talented stars, hosted by #1 TV host, Sleepy David. Shining Stars TV show, every Friday, 7:30 p.m. only on KTN Home. Be part of the journey.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
24 teams, 12 host cities, 6 groups, all battling for one trophy. The long-awaited Euro 2020 is here at last upon us. The fans might not be within touching distance.
Good cross, Giroud attacks it and scores, and France are ahead!
But the atmosphere will only get to a fever pitch. From the 11th of June to the 11th of July, catch the tackles, the goals, and all your favorite football stars as the elite European nations go head-to-head. The Standard Group brings you the UEFA Euro 2020 tournament live across our channel.
Oh, what a wonderful goal!
As the official UEFA Euro 2020 free-to-air broadcast partner in Kenya, because we live for the game. And that's why at Standard Group, sports lives here.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Hello.
Halo, umesikia?
Nimesikia nini?
Hujasikia habari? Hebu acha nikuambie. Kile kimetokea.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Don't wait for hearsay. Dial *550*1# to read the Standard e-paper from the convenience of your mobile phone for only 20 shillings from your telecom line, and stay up to date for a reliable source with over 100 years of experience with no additional data charges.
As the Kenyans are roared into the home straight here. 4 Kenyan queens have lit up this balmy Bahamian night.
It's where the rivalry is unmatched, where the soul meets the track, where the great are distinguished from the good. An arena where the records are broken.
A new world record. It's not just been beaten, it's been obliterated.
A stage where the legends are born. For Team Kenya, the Olympics is more than just a sport. It is our tradition. It's an event that has put Kenya on the roadmap. The Standard Group lets you watch every minute and every action live in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, because we live for Team Kenya. We live for the game. At Standard Group, sports lives here.
It's cloudy in Nairobi at 17, highs of 24 today. High chance of rain later. Cloudy conditions in Nyeri at 15, highs of 24 and lows of 15. 15 also is the lucky number in Nakuru. It's partly sunny, going to highs of 25. 15 in Eldoret and mostly cloudy, highs of 23 and lows of 14. Kisumu will go to a high of 29 today and a low of 19. It's cloudy at the moment. It's cloudy in Kakamega at 20, highs of 28 and lows of 16. Light rain in Mombasa at 27, highs of 31, lows of 26. 26 will also be the low recorded in Malindi. There's light rain now at 28. Mostly sunny conditions in Kampala at 20, highs of 26. 30 will be the high in Dar es Salaam, where it's mostly sunny at 25. Clear conditions in Johannesburg at 16, highs of 25 and lows of 12. Partly cloudy conditions in Lagos at 27, highs of 33 and lows of 26. And it's mostly clear in Kinshasa at 25. We'll see highs of 33 and lows of 24.
everything nice. Alright, okay. SpiceFM.
Spice up your life.
Okay, not to forget that all vehicles that currently operate from railways will drop passengers at the Green Park terminus until 9 o'clock. It's about an hour and a half into that exercise. So remember, you will not be dropped at railways bus terminal this morning, at least until 9 a.m. So don't be shocked in terms of what's happening. And that's where Luna Park used to be. Testing out this first phase of that transition. And so we hope that it will be smooth. Just know that that's where traffic is headed for public service vehicles getting into the city this morning. Okay, on Mombasa Road, it's still a bit slow. We have that thin stretch between Cabanas and General Motors, and it gets thinner by the day, so let's watch out for that one. Getting to the roundabout at the Nyayo Stadium, obviously we'll go towards Langata Road, towards Airdrome Road, or towards Bagathi Way. Coming in from Westlands, it looks pretty good into the city. Not too much of an issue there. It's starting to get piled up on Thika Road, so we're going to have to sit this one out. Talk to us if you need to get stuck in any situations or find a good route for anyone to use. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
27 minutes to 8.
94.4 Spice FM.
The Situation Room with CT Muga Nduoko, Eric Latif. We're looking at the Constitution and the law. The Constitution says all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. The Constitution then goes ahead to give Parliament the powers to come up with enact laws that will determine how elections, for example, shall be held, how the eligibility criteria for candidates to various positions, elective positions. And that's why the Elections Act came, which was enacted in Parliament in 2017, says, okay, this will be the minimum requirements, among other things, that for you to be a member of Parliament, and this is National Assembly or the Senate, or a member of the County Assembly, you need to have a minimum qualification of a university degree. This was suspended first. They said, all right, so it shall not apply in this immediate election because, we need to give people time to go and get degrees. And also to give people time so that they can vet people who have degrees. But it shall apply in subsequent elections. Subsequent is next year.
Yes.
The question this morning is it necessary for an MP, an MCA, a woman rep, a senator to have a university degree? There are very many comments on social media. Let's read them and then pick up your calls on 0719 012 600.
Julia Kajid Tuju says, if you can convince masses to elect you into office, you can legislate for them. You already have what it takes. Shadrach Mutinda says, vetting members of the County Assembly ought to be implemented and authenticate that they are in possession of the right academic qualifications before entering into or for the ballot. We do not want to be led by academic dwarfs. Morioki says, it is important to have eligibility parameters. Otherwise, we might as well elect convicted criminals and attempt to rehabilitate them while they serve in Parliament. Okay. Johanna says, why do we need education if we are going to be led by educated leaders at the county level, like Homa Bay, where they can only fight? Okay, I think there's more than one message that's being passed there. Let the law be passed and implemented immediately, according to Benson Omambia. And then this law would limit the choices of representatives. The electorate desires, but knowledgeable representatives would save the same electorate from poor decision making and enhance better oversight.
Okay. So there's a win and lose.
Yes, there is a win and lose.
Net
according
result,
to Joe.
win or lose.
Win-lose. Being an MC or MP is a job like any other with specific KPIs which can be attained better when one is equipped with a degree, according to Kali Mutua. The effects of having, dumb MCAs are there to be seen by all when they callously pass strange documents thinking it was the BBI.
The assumption here that Kali has is that our county assemblies do not have people who hold degrees.
How
be
very
surprised.
wrong
Which is not true.
How very
Which is not
how
true.
very, very wrong that assertion is.
Yeah, you'll be very surprised. Let's go to the phone lines. Karaoke in Nakuru, good morning.
Good morning to you guys. How are you?
Good morning. Fine, thanks.
I agree with what Seti is saying. First and foremost, remember when we got independent, guys.
Yep.
The many people who were given the position of power by then were not learned. But if you look at our country by then and now, you find that our country stood, despite the fact that we had no knowledge of anything to do with leadership. Two, why do we have to adapt a foreign language? Go to our neighbor Tanzania. Tell me, Magufuli was a doctor, isn't it? Have you ever had him even one day using English language, even in parliament, or even addressing his own people? Tell me something. Today in parliament, the people that we have today are lawyers, doctors, and professors. When you are using that language, how do you expect to communicate to Mama Mboga and when? I mean, tell me, how will you communicate to that old woman in the market when you are using that big word in English? I mean, tell me something. Can I give you an example? Please, will you allow me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes.
I remember in the early 1980s, we had a mayor who was called Kanye. I think most of you know him. Early 1980s. He was the mayor of Nakuru. And today, if you come to the county of Nakuru town, in fact, and ask the people, who do you think has performed the best way ever since independence in our town? The whole Nakuru town will tell you that man, in fact, performed tremendously. Point number two, why shouldn't we use the language that would be understandable to all? Tell me something, in fact. Why do we keep on using a foreign language? English is not our language. Today, before you are appointed an ambassador to maybe to America or anywhere else, the first question to be asked is are you a lawyer? Are you qualified in one way or two in English? Why don't we ask the same question when ambassadors come to our country? Why don't we? Whether they know Kiswahili or something to do with our language. Why don't we ask that question? Why should they keep on asking whether we know English or not? Yeah? And we don't do the vice versa. So, to my intel to that is that members of the assembly, representative of county assembly, and members of parliament and the Senate should not have that because the law belongs to the people.
Okay.
If today people in Nakuru County decide we want a governor so and so and we don't want that person who has a degree, are we led by a degree or a person? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karaoke. What do you think? 0719-012-600. Is it important or necessary to have a MCA or member of parliament hold a degree? Already, the issue about the president or governor is not being discussed here, but we can also throw it in because Karaoke has brought it in. Is it important to have your leader actually holding a university degree? And the issue here is university, not higher education. It's university degree. Education is not only for reading and writing, but to help expand our way of thinking and reasoning with one another. And let's look at this issue with a sober mind. That is what Omoro is saying. It's helping us. So, what has happened in the last, 15, 20 years in this country is that in everything now is, university degree, minimum, university degree this, university degree the other, university degree. And now, in the last couple of years, we've started shifting focus back into TVETs. TVETs are not giving you university degree.
No, they don't.
So they'll give you certificates, diploma, higher national diplomas. Does it mean that somebody who has gone through a TVET has worked, has experience, has managed a factory, a company, cannot really go into parliament and legislate and participate in lawmaking and oversight and representing their people?
Speaking anecdotally, remember in the days when we had polytechnics. We had them in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu. National polytechnics, as we call them, before they became universities. Now, I'm saying anecdotally, employers preferred to employ people who had their diplomas or higher diplomas from these institutions when employing them as engineers in whatever field of engineering. If you looked at, for instance, the internship period that the Polytechnic had, it was always in phases. It wasn't that you after 3 years, first year, you go for a certain internship. Second year, another internship. Meaning, by the time you finish your 3-year course, you actually have a very hands-on understanding of what it is you're supposed to do. Those who had degrees didn't quite have that sort of internship. So there was that preference. What am I saying? I am saying that if you looked at Egerton College before it became a university, it also offered just diploma courses. Yet the University of Nairobi, we have a campus in Kabete that offered degrees in agriculture.
Yep.
But again, anecdotally speaking, the market preferred to employ people who came from Egerton College because their hands-on experience was known to be superior, to put it very simply. You could rely on that person to get a job and know exactly what to do because Egerton provided that sort of background. So, are we saying that somebody who had, say, maybe a certificate, and we did have people with certificates, and they would be employed? Or people who did animal husbandry, as we called it then, at a place called Haiti, up in Kabete. Are we saying that these are people who weren't qualified? The truth of the matter is, the contents of those courses met the needs that were there. Because some of these people were then employed as what we then called extension workers. They were very necessary. Now, are you telling me that somebody who qualifies for those courses could not have furthered their education? They could have. Some people end up where they do because, as I said, they don't have the means to. Others have problems with exams. Not that they don't have the aptitude. Others may even have the aptitude and qualify and have those qualifications we're speaking of. But are they necessarily good leaders? You see, the question we are asking here
is whether they meet the qualification for being a good leader.
And whether the people who elect these individuals have a good idea of whom they would prefer to have lead them.
Okay, let's go back to the lines. Alan in Siaya, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Let me make a quick contribution. So far, the debate is very informed, but it begs one question. Is it Kenyans who, in their wisdom, decided when making the 2010 constitution to have that requirement? If the answer is yes, then why are we subverting the will of Kenyans? We must have a historical perspective. Why were people looking for that requirement when making the 2010 constitution? Because remember,
it's not in the constitution. It's not in the constitution. It's actually in an act of parliament. The constitution does not specify.
If you look at the draft, if you look at the Bomas draft, if you look at before it was mutilated, there were a lot of representations on the quality of debate. Let me just ground it. I belong to a certain union, which represents quite a number of people. What we have experienced there, to our very painful experience, is that the type of people we put in there could not read the dots and the underlining and the small print. What happens is that you end up with a situation where people have very good intentions, but because they cannot comprehend some things, they end up passing laws which end up hurting the membership. And that is basically why people need to understand, maybe have some level of education when they are afforded an opportunity to lead. Remember, we are talking about policy. We are talking about laws. We are talking about legislation.
Can I ask you a question, please?
Yes, please.
So why must the minimum requirement be a degree?
The minimum requirement must be a degree, according to me, simply because when you have a degree, there is a hidden implication that you are in a position probably to grasp more. I have understood what you are saying, that probably after being elected, then you will need to be taken maybe for some orientation, you will need to be taken maybe for some course, which already happened when I see the elected leaders are represented, to know what is happening. But it assumes that you already have some minimum understanding. You can imagine a situation where maybe probably somebody has the very basic of education, no disrespect intended to people who didn't have those opportunities, But you can imagine a situation where somebody has the very basic minimum. Maybe, for example, you reach class 8. Even if you are going to be afforded an opportunity to understand how the rigmaroles of debate go on, remember you have that legislative duty. You are supposed to come up with a law. You are supposed to own it. You are supposed to contextualize it and then put it in a way that it will help your people. If you don't have that ability to analyze, understand complexities, how are you going to be able to come up with a law, come up with a policy document? The net effect will be what Madam is talking about rightfully there, saying, yes, tumekubali, atutaki, kwenda, you know. So, no disrespect intended, but I think there should be a basic minimum. Remember, even when you are going to become, for example, a journalist, it does not mean that you cannot be born and be able to get somebody who can be able to generate content. But we need you to package this content. How are you going to package it if you don't have maybe a basic minimum which can be polished?
Alan, we hear you. Let's hear from others as well. Thank you very much. Irongo in Kisii, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm fine. What about you?
We are
We're
fine.
very well, thank you.
City.
Yes.
I like the way you are trying to argue, but I'm worried. as to
Trying? I
whether-
thought I was actually arguing.
You know, my worry
Yes.
is whether your heart is in what you are telling us.
Actually, it is.
I simply want to add to what has been said already. It is my understanding that we need some basic qualifications before you are allowed to legislate on behalf of the people who have elected you. City is telling us that we are limiting the number of people who can be elected. That now we are trying to tell people, amongst those that you have, make sure the one you are electing has a degree. Very many people have degrees. Very many. With the upsurge of universities, very many people have degrees. Secondly, if we are saying that even those who have degrees, those who have what sometimes misbehave in the parliament, even those who don't have also misbehave. So I'm trying to look at the situation where we are calling these people honorable members of the National Assembly, honorable members of the Senate, of the county assemblies. When county assemblies were allowed to be formed so that we have legislation, people sit there and converse in English as it were. In fact, it goes without saying that these guys must be elected on the basis of some basic qualifications. So it is asking, must it be a university degree?
Yes.
I think so. I think so. Not that the degree is going to make somebody legislate better. Let it be also understood that we have also watched, even in the National Assembly, some people getting intimidated. In fact, one time, I saw one MP, I don't want to mention his name, on national TV. I think it was Citizen. They were being interviewed together with Professor Nyang Nyongo. You know, he had to say, okay, I may not be able to understand what the professor is saying, but you see, so he was now digressing, running away. And I want to imagine that's your MP. So my position is
So,
that
Irongo, your
let
conclusion was that MP, because he was not a professor, did not have a university degree.
Or that he was not a suitable representative of his people.
You know, when you allow yourself to go on the national TV to argue some point out, and then you are admitting that you don't understand what you are talking about, it tells me then that we need something so that at least in the parliament you can be in tandem with others.
But surely, I mean, is it a real fair competition? a renowned scholar like Anyang' Nyong'o, how many people do you think can actually sustain a decent argument or debate with such a person? I mean, in all honesty, to be fair to this MP.
So what Irongo is saying essentially is that you should have a minimum on which you should enter onto this platform, a minimum
All
requirement.
right. So what's the difference between then somebody who has a diploma and somebody who has a degree? Are you saying that the person who has a diploma cannot understand what somebody who has a degree does?
No. I'm saying that there needs to be some higher education beyond high school, because you cannot compare what happens with your mind in critical thinking after high school than if you didn't have it. Experience might chalk it up to that. That's why in some cases you have, for example, that you can go do a master's degree without having an undergrad because of your experience in the work field.
Yes.
That experience is absolutely necessary, and sometimes that degree affords you that experience. Giving the same examples that you were talking about, bouncing your ideas off somebody who taught you, bouncing your ideas off somebody who you were in the same class with. It makes a difference. Their experience is what we are talking about. And now that should give that basic requirement upon which you want to go in and lead. It's not child's play we're talking about here.
Dennis
we're
is on
talking
the
about
line.
affairs of a country.
Dennis is on the line. Let's hear from him. Dennis, good morning.
Good morning to you, Siti, Ndu, and Eric.
Good morning.
Morning to you. Now, I would like to ask Siti,
Yes.
what is the literacy level in Kenya at the moment?
You're asking me a question I think you have the answer to. Tell me, what is it?
Currently, do you know there are certain communities or certain, because we are only looking at this in terms of legislation. How about
Yeah.
representation?
Yes.
Because there are certain communities that do not even have a tertiary education amongst themselves, leave alone a degree.
True.
So does it mean those people cannot be represented?
Thank you.
They can
Because-
import.
No.
They can import.
No.
Those fellows,
As
those
they
those things
build
of
their
import.
capacity.
The last time we imported a legislature is the one who is currently facing cases because of being who he was at Kiambu. So what I'm simply trying to say is this, guys. I think it is very important for university degree, but however, I think tertiary, they should go down, they should say that it should be tertiary and not a degree instead. Reason being, I'm an engineer myself.
Okay.
And some of the fellows who are turning out of the tertiary institutions like the polytechnics tend to even be sharper than some of the engineers who are in the office.
So you do agree
But
that some
for
kind of
one
higher,
reason or the other.
higher
For
level
one
of
reason or-
education is required, but not necessarily at
Higher-
the degree level. Past high school is absolutely
Not a degree level. At least they can say a tertiary education, but not a degree level. Because when it comes, even most of those guys who have degrees, even in our parliament, are the ones that are the mostly bad mannered guys coining laws that hide things. People come and realize later, adding their salaries, and at times they do not even care about the legislation. I mean, the representation that they are coming from. I think it should be more about if you can understand, if you have sound mind and you've got a tertiary education, but not necessarily a degree.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Thank you very much. Time for us to take a break at 5 minutes to 8 o'clock, but the conversation continues. And as we take the break, remember GenerationNextChallenge.com. This is a website that allows your children to participate in learning and better understanding of math, computational skills, robotics, and nurturing their creative abilities by connecting math to real life. So GenerationNextChallenge.com. Register your child between the ages of kindergarten level through to 11th grade. They participate in several challenges throughout the day, and then later on at some point in the challenge, they keep earning several badges, and those badges then give them access to scholarships to participate in global challenges. By the end of this, your children will be much better in math. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation at the Situation Room.
There are so many people peddling what is false and that it bears remarkable resemblance to what is true.
Politicians have their agenda, and their agenda is to use every opportunity to sell that agenda and to loot this nation.
I have seen major strides that are done in this country when we talk to each other as against talking at each other.
We start getting back into the tribal cocoons which were put to us by the colonial powers. You know, they gave us physical freedom but not mental freedom. We're still mentally colonized today into these cocoons of tribe.
Now, if you live in an area where it's difficult to find a dog,
He's a goat. I kid you not.
In which part of this country is it difficult to find a dog? So that you resort. Afande umbo yako iko na pembe.
Hii ni umba special.
All right.
This is the Situation Room. The only way.
2 minutes out of the top of the hour. So the conversation here that we continue is with regards to that minimum qualification for one to become a leader. Let me ask you, for those very many years that the people of Kiambaa elected Njenga Karume, did they lack in representation? Did they get less quality representation from the people of Othaya who had a London School of Economics graduate?
Well, not only London School of Economics graduates, the first African, the first Kenyan to actually have a master's degree. Yes. But ask the question, when Mulu Mutisia represented his constituency, did he represent them adequately? Is he still considered to be one of the better leaders who have come out of that region? You see, are we then saying that people cannot decide who is best suited to lead them, and that they also don't know who has qualifications and who doesn't, and who, despite their qualifications or with having their qualification, I am saying, let the people decide. If they elect someone who has the qualifications, that person, good. If they elect someone who doesn't have those lofty qualifications, that's the person they want. I am saying
it's their sovereign will.
Yes, I am saying
they're
people
exercising their sovereign power.
Yes, and they have the ability to determine who they think will be a good leader for them.
Who is going to work on a platform, and that platform has then put in a minimum requirement and saying, in as much as you're representing the people, here you are on this platform, and we're asking that you be able to do 1, 2, 3, and that you have certain requirements that then enables you to do so. If it was just about representation of the people, then you can go stand on a podium in the middle of the constituency and do whatever you want. But you're going to come and operate within government, and within that platform they're saying this is the minimum requirements that we want. I do agree that you should be able to get it on the job. I do agree that it not necessarily have to be a degree, but this higher level of education, this platform upon which you want to go and serve these people, that's the minimum requirement that they're asking for. Abide by it. Otherwise, you can be a walkabout politician in the marketplace, under a tree, but if you're going to serve in parliament...
Okay. Thank you very much for continuing to tune into the conversation. It continues. In the next hour, we look at the progress of reforms in the coffee sector. So we've seen that farmers in the coffee sector this year have made some killing in terms of the earnings, 17 billion shillings. We'll be speaking with the chairman of the new KPCU shortly. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
Okay, so for another hour, we're going to see all public service vehicles that would ordinarily park at the railways terminal will be going towards the Green Park terminus this morning, and that's where Luna Park used to be. So no panics there, but it's you're going in that direction. That is where you will get off and get on public service, at least for the next 1 hour, and then we're going to see how this transition happens. Coming off Mombasa Road, a little bit of traffic. Right around General Motors, and it's going to slow down some all the way to the turnoff at the Southern Bypass. Southern Bypass helping folks out this morning, as is the new ICD route into the city and into and onto Mombasa Road. So use that, guys. It'll help out a lot. The other bypasses are behaving very well today. Red Hill, Northern and Eastern, no problems there. Coming off of Thika Road into the CBD as well, looking pretty good. Let's keep an eye on things. 8:30 or so, we'll let you know what the situation turns out to be. Traffic out right in the middle of it right now. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Let's talk. Text us as well, 40127.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room,
It's 2.5
the only
minutes
way to
after 8 o'clock. Kenya's biggest conversation continues as we begin this third hour of the show. C.T. Muga, today's proverb.
A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse to the grave.
A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse to the grave. Okay. Okay. It's sad.
For the fly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it means if you don't have advisors, what does that mean even for you as a fly?
You die with your leader. You die with your host.
You're just there. No advisors means no friends. It's a solitary life.
No friends means you're poor.
Yeah, no friends. The other proverb was, no friends means you're poor. Aye, surely.
And if you're poor, it also means that instead of understanding that in a time of crisis you need to build a bridge, you will build a dam.
Okay.
So let's talk about agriculture. We've been having conversations around agriculture on this show quite often because we understand that it is one of those very critical sectors of Kenya's economy. A majority of Kenya's population directly or indirectly depends on agriculture. Okay? So you've seen several things. In those years when I was in school, when you were a teacher.
Wow.
Yes.
We were taught.
You realize that's a heavy-laden statement, don't you?
Yes.
Yes, I'm a very young
It is
man.
appropriate.
You won't forget it.
Those are
I'm a
accolades.
very young man. So, in those days, we were taught about the way the agriculture sector was organized, and it was very clear how it used to be organized. So, first of all, those in dairy had an aggregator. So, smallholder dairy farmers had an aggregator called the Kenya Cooperative Creameries. Just using the whole cooperative movement.
KCC.
Those who are grain growers had an aggregator called the Kenya Grain Growers Cooperative Union. Those who are in the coffee sector had the Kenya Planters Cooperative.
Actually, it was Kenya Farmers Association before that. Actually.
Then there's Kenya Farmers Association,
Yes.
right? And then there was also the organization of how you can access credit for all these farmers. It was properly organized. And then things went, as things go, global warming, everything else, brains, climate change. Blah, blah, blah. We saw a couple of changes, and we have, for example, now seeing the push and pull and the clamor for reforms in the tea sector. We have seen the push and pull and clamor for reforms in the sugarcane sector. We are seeing the same. Pyrethrum, which was one of the key cash crops of this country, now there's all this conversation of how can we revive pyrethrum? How shall we? It starts, it stops.
How can we revive cotton?
How can we revive cotton, which was a key cash crop in this country? Coffee. Many coffee farmers got to a point where they got so disillusioned and feeling so let down by this crop that used to work very well for them that they just went and cut their coffee bushes. Those that stayed pushed for reforms, and reforms were implemented. So one of the things that has happened is that the president the other day said, all right, so let's have these reforms. The CS in charge of agriculture said, let's reform the Kenya Planters Cooperative Union, and now it was called the new KPCU. A new board was instituted. It's in place. We want to talk about what has happened since then. But at the same time, there's some good news as coffee farmers reap big because the sector has made 17 billion shillings. Now, this is big because coffee farmers will basically get higher earnings this year, depending on various factors. per farmer, quality of your crop. But let's bring in the chairman of the new Kenya Planters Cooperative Union. His name is Henry Kenywa, and he joins us now on the line. Good morning, Henry.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
We'll start off, we'll go into the whole conversation of the reforms in the coffee sector, the journey towards this and how far you've gone. But let's first of all understand the new KPCU. Why new and what are you doing?
I think it's an interesting part. New KPCU came in office in 2019, like December 2019, and with 3 mandates. Number one, to support farmers in marketing their coffee. Two, support milling and milling of the farmers' coffee. And thirdly, to administer the coffee cherry advance revolving fund. So that we do the 3 mandates that we have been doing, and we have made tremendous progress in each and every pillar that we have established to work on.
Do you represent all coffee farmers in the country, or do you only represent the smallholder farmers?
And I think the coffee, I think it is now the way it is as a part, and therefore supports all coffee farmers. That is now. I think maybe let's go straight. Well, when it comes to milling, we mill for everybody, small and large. If we go for we go for marketing, we can also market for small and large. So every coffee farmer in Kenya. However, when you work with Coffee Cherry Advance Revolving Fund, the regulations that govern that piece of fund is very specific. That it is more to smallholder farmers and estates that grow coffee technical and below. So that one is very, very specific. It's for that.
So if I may just ask, because I'd like to know, so what is this thing that you are now doing which was not done before, or are you simply continuing with the activities that the organization has done in the past?
I think the thing is, you can see we are currently doing maybe would be more or less is what we're doing it now, doing a bit better. In terms of something that was, or rather we're doing differently now, I can say the Coffee Cherry Advance Revolving Fund, but also we looked at the milling. In fact, like the milling, we looked at it as we are milling, see what exactly are the real issues, and or what leads to farmers' disillusionment. As you understand, coffee has different stages. The farmers harvest the red cherry. It is packed at their factory and then dried to what we call parchment. That parchment is that what is now sold or delivered to the dry miller for it to be milled into clean coffee that is marketed. And that is at the stage where you have different grades, about 7 grades. And those conversions, if they are not properly addressed, can have their own issues. So what we did as a new KPC and came on board was to ensure there is proper transparency at the milling. So we say before the coffee is milled, the farmer, all the distributors must be there so that by the time it is milled, they see what their grades are. And that again has divided all across. That I see that now that is coming to be part of the proposed Coffee Act to ensure that there is that transparency. Because once that is well done, even when you go to the market, it becomes easier for the farmer to follow. What they produce? Is it actually what was taken to the market?
There's as we're having this conversation basically about tea and the tea sector and the kind of reforms, you get to understand just by talking to tea farmers and those in the sector that it's a very complex industry, right? There are people who play at various levels. There's a farmer all the way to marketing it, and there are very many players in there who have a specific role that they play, which is also, quite complex. And then the conversation then goes into, so how do you get to understand or to unpack the sector? And so that then you're able to bring in the reforms that would make sure that they're benefiting every player in the sector. And if every player in the sector needs to benefit, or there are some that needs to be removed. And I think those are some of the questions that, when you hear reforms, you ask, What does reform mean?
And even just to kind of change the way things have been operating previously. Because if you look at the chain of operation, it just seems that there's so many people in the middle. You've got, and at the end of the day, the person who will buy and the person who will produce seem to be almost the most important people in the chain. But everybody in between seems to either be playing a role that would circumvent the process and not aid the process to the point at which farmers would benefit. And more often than not, you hear farmers crying about the same thing over and over. Who regulates the price of their product? How can they make sure that they're getting top dollar for what it is that they're putting in terms of, farming inputs and things like that? Who's going to make it easy for them to be able to take their goods to market, kind of thing? Those are their interests. Those are their issues. But it would just seem as if there's this long line of confusion that is in the middle of all of this. And why does it have to be that way? So reforms for many of them would mean take out the middlemen, take out these middle line operations that seem to be making the life of their farming so difficult.
But again, I should ask, does it necessarily mean that the middlemen are unnecessary and that their existence of necessity makes life for the farmers difficult? What is the historical purpose of having these middlemen? And instead of just talking about removing them, what do we talk about when you talk about reform? What is it that needs to be done now that would, in this day and age, be of the most benefit to the farmer? That's the question I would ask. And what are these things that need to be done? Because when you talk about players, it goes to not just the consumer of the product, but the person who makes that particular product consumable.
But what have farmers been complaining about for the longest time, if you want to look at them? How many of them have said, you know what, forget it, cut this thing down and let's put up a building where I can get rent and I can actually see a direct result of my input? Because for the longest time, I plant this product 18 months, then I'm able to harvest. And then what am I getting? 20 shillings, okay, for tea, for example, 21 shillings a kilo. And then and it's regulated by somebody. Is it possible to remove all of these things in the middle that then would allow me to be able to see value for my effort? The cry from many, many tea farmers and coffee farmers over time, coffee farmers has been, we are not able to see our sweat.
But you don't
We
want
cannot even afford our life. And this is something that we spend all our lives putting our effort into.
You know why that complaint has been there? Because they can go back into, again, history. And there was a time when they benefited immensely from this particular enterprise.
Yeah, when this was a crop that basically you knew that I have coffee and this is going to help me to take my kids to school. Like you say, take your children to school, live a life.
It gave you guarantees.
No, it doesn't.
And then you get to a point where you actually don't even know. In fact, at the end of the year, your local union or your local factory is saying that you owe them, having delivered crop to them. And you wonder, so why?
For why am I doing this?
Farmers wake up one morning with a panga and they decide, my friend, we are done with this. And Henry Kenyua, who's the chairman of the new KPCU, understands this very well. He's worked in the industry, in the agriculture sector for quite a while. Henry was CEC for agriculture in Nyeri County. Henry has also worked in Tanzania, advising the president of Tanzania, working in the office of the president in agriculture sector and reforms. So, Henry, just coming from that, would I be wrong to assume that you actually have that coffee background while growing up, that you are one of those people who call themselves coffee children?
Yeah, I think the interesting part, maybe I would say, no, I grew up actually in Kieni. So Kieni, we didn't grow coffee.
Okay, yes.
But the interesting part when I graduated from university, my first assignment was in Muranga to work with coffee farmers there. So I started working with training farmers on how to spray, how to harvest. I've had a lot of interaction with coffee from that side, from a professional standpoint, and dealing with farmers, dealing with millers, and all the other all the other players in the industry.
So the things that we are talking about, farmers and their frustrations, these are things that you've seen firsthand.
Absolutely.
What are these main frustrations by farmers?
I think it's quite interesting to read it if we can trace back. to what issues that when the rain started beating us. There was a time, as you said before, when the industry was very well structured in terms of we had the aggregator, we had a marketer. It was largely more government-driven. So we had the coffee board that to do the marketing. We had KPCU that to do the aggregation, milling, and and all handling the part of the input. And then that time also what we had was the extension services the government was working. So farmers was able to receive the extension advice on what to do, when and how. They were able to access inputs on when for what they need, and then they'll be able to get their money when it's paid. However, with the time, we got into liberalization, which was a good thing in one way, responding to some of the global trends. However, the way it was done here was done so poorly that the farmers was left dangling. The farmers was left without any support, and therefore from that time, the farmers lost their incomes, and the farmers, up to now, today, they have not recovered. And that's why you've seen the various reforms they actually been looked into to ensure, number one, the farmer is able to get their rightful pay and also promptly. Because every farmer all over the world requires just two things, to be paid well and to be paid promptly.
When you say the rain started beating us, I like the phrase, but I'd like you to explain it. In your view, when did the rain start beating the coffee farmer?
I think we've seen quite a bit. They have been at different stages. You can say at the late 80s. We start now from the 88. Things started going back. Then we had a bit of an improvement. But the late 90s. It's when clearly now things went south completely. One, the model of liberalization was like rushed, in my opinion. And therefore, you could find whereby farmers now, we have so many other players, but the farmers themselves are not organized. Instead of the institutions that were there were weakened. And that is why you see even in the new reforms that, the task force that went out, part of the issue that they identified was the need for institutional support. Strengthen the institutions from the farmer institutions all the way to the top that will be able to ensure that the value chain is protected. Most importantly, that the farmer is able to receive their the process of their sales, but also be able to get input and advisory that will help them in their business.
Okay, so these reforms, what exactly are we looking at here to get to the point where things were going on really well some 10, 20 years ago, and farmers then could actually see the benefit of their input and the benefit of their effort? So today we are saying we're at the point where reforms are absolutely necessary, and to stop this thing where farmers are saying we're going to burn this crop to the ground and we'd rather put up a building and at least that I can see I can get rent from this thing, right? So what reforms are we looking at, and what are the things that would frustrate a farmer to that point that we now want to get rid of?
Lovely. I think I'll need to look at it, maybe just give you a little bit of a background on how the reforms, particularly the current reforms. In 2016, the President of the Republic of Kenya set up a task force to review what is aiding the coffee industry, review and document what aiding the coffee industry. They went around and came up with about 8 points that needed to be sorted out. One was the legal reforms, ensure there is a comprehensive legal reforms in the industry. They proposed a 3-year subsidy program. This is to ensure that farmers are able to access input. That was not the case before. They also proposed the subject of the coffee cherry advance revolving fund, the one that I said have been now established as being managed by the institution that I chair. Then they talked about modernization of the Nairobi Coffee Exchange. They talked about, again, the youth agenda, because currently, if you look at the age of, I think the study I saw was the average age of a coffee farmer is about 65, over 60 years. Then they talked about institutional support, then support marketing, and also the issue of the debt problem. Because one big challenge was that quite a number of these farmers' organizations have they have so many debt. They owe suppliers, they owe different, for many reasons. I mean, there have been a lot of issues in the industry. That is back like what Eric or you were discussing before this, that you take your coffee, it's harvested, you're told, by the way, actually, we are not even paying you, you owe us. And the farmer is like, okay, then can I cut this bloody thing? I mean, it's not helping me. Why would I be paying you guys? So that has been the problem. And I think those are the reforms that are now being looked into to ensure that problem does. So the issue of the debt, I think the issue is going on. And there's an ongoing program. Can we audit audits all these debts, which debts are owed to who, and how can that one be addressed. And most important, all these things have been now put together. What happened, I think, then in 2019 or thereabout, when the president then appointed Peter Munya as the CS of Agriculture, with a very clear agenda to reform some of these industries, as we have actually even mentioned them before. For coffee, these things to happen, you need to have a very clear legal framework, and that's what it started with the legal reforms, and that's what we have the ongoing debate on the Coffee Act.
Okay, on a global scale, in terms of exports for coffee, where do we stand? I mean, looking at the country now as a whole, and then what would be able to feed in from Kenya to the globe. If you have all of these rumblings and murmurings on the ground, how then would it affect Kenya's ability then to feed in to a global supply? And how are we looking at getting things back up there?
Oh, lovely. I think we have a big problem. I mean, you have to address and one big issue we have is the issue of volumes. We are so low the volume we are producing that actually we have to be humble to appreciate that the world market can move on without Kenyan coffee. But Kenyan coffee cannot move without the world market because we drink less than 5% of our coffee, all the rest we have to export. However, for us to have to be felt in the global market, we have to up our volumes. We have to really ramp up pretty quickly because right now we are less than 2% of the global market. Nobody really, I think, if we don't produce one day, we are not selling. The world will not feel us. So we have to really up our game and make sure that we are there. Right? This year we produce about 35,000 tons of green coffee. We used to do up to about 150,000. So we are actually at a third of what you used to do. The second thing is that the global market still likes our coffee, but some of these commodities, your volumes can be so low that you just become, you have to be combined with others. It becomes a level that it cannot be properly marketed and branded as a commodity because of all these issues. So I think the main challenge that have to be addressed with these reforms and everything is also to ensure that we have the volumes going up. But you not have the volumes going up. Number one, the farmers don't have the trust in the industry. Secondly, the farmers are not well protected within the law. And thirdly, the farmers are not provided with the input and advisory that they require. And that is now the part, if you look at it, the coffee bill is really attempting to, is the key area that the coffee bill is.
Let's take a break at this point, having a conversation with Henry Kenyua, chairman of the new KPCU, looking at the progress of reforms in the coffee sector. Just like he said, at some point we used to export 150,000 tons of coffee. This year we've done 35,000 tons of coffee. And here we are, we say, among those that we list as our foreign exchange earners is coffee. We are just about less than 2% of the global coffee trade. And here, anyway, 25 minutes after 8, let's have this conversation after we take this break with Henry Kenyua, chairman UKPCU. Good morning.
(24/7) around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
It's time to answer questions that are worthwhile. The Big Quiz Show is here. Register to play from the comfort of your home by SMSing the word JOIN to 23774. Then watch the live show on KTN every Sunday from 8 p.m. where you could have a chance to win a mealie. The fastest and most accurate answers are guaranteed to win. The Big Quiz Show, Sundays at 8 p.m. only on KTN.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
We've been all through it, We go to school, study hard, get the much-deserved grades, and celebrate our graduation. Then reality hits us. We get to the job market and we simply don't know where to start off. Thankfully, by visiting jobs.standardmedia.co.ke, your next career breakthrough could be a click away. Get the best in career advice, employment opportunities, internships, part-time jobs, CV writing, and interview coaching. Give your career the much needed lift on jobs.standardmedia.co.ke.
It's 19 degrees and partly sunny in Nairobi. 24 will be the high and lows of 17. Mostly cloudy conditions in Nyeri at 16, highs of 24. 25 will be the high in Nakuru. It's partly sunny at 17. It's also 17 and cloudy in Eldoret. It'll go to highs of 23 and lows of 14. 29 will be the high in Kisumu today. It's cloudy at 23. We're looking at highs of 28 and lows of 16 in Kakamega. Rain showers continue in Mombasa at 28, highs of 31 and lows of 26. And it's also raining lightly in Malindi at 28, highs of 31. Highs of 26 in Kampala, mostly sunny conditions at 21, and it's partly sunny in Dar es Salaam at 26, going to highs of 30. 25 will be the high in Johannesburg, where it's sunny at 17, and it's partly cloudy in Lagos at 27. It'll go to highs of 33. 33 will also be the high in Kinshasa, where it's 25 right now and sunny.
Spice up your life.
So you're not going to railways this morning. You're going to what was Luna Park before if you were in a public service vehicle today. The Nairobi Metropolitan Services is experimenting with this and seeing how folks can get off there. It's going to be a new park, and let's hope that transition will be smooth. I know folks are already complaining about how you're going to get there, and vehicles are wondering, okay, what's going on here? That's what's happening. Move from railways to Luna Park, and it is now the Green Park terminus. Okay, so let's see how that pans out. It's about 30 minutes to go. After 9 o'clock, that will not be, and we'll see if it will be something that will result in permanency. Okay, other roads in Nairobi, still some traffic. Mombasa Road, yes, there is. Thika Road a little bit, yes, there is. Coming off of Limuru Road into the CBD, getting then towards the Aga Khan passing, use Wangari Maathai. Better for you to get into the CBD quicker. You're going to get stuck at Ngara towards the Globe Cinema overpass. Okay, let's talk in a bit and see how it opens up. SpiceFM KE, that's us on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done
28
right.
minutes after 8.
94.4 Spice.
Right here in the Situation Room. In the room, you have CT Muga, Ndu Oko, and Eric Latif. We are joined by Henry Kenyua, chairman of the new KPCU. That's the new Kenya Planters Cooperative Union. They're the ones who are dealing with reforms in the coffee sector. Some basic facts about our coffee sector in the country. As told by the chairman of new KPCU, we consume, of all the coffee that we produce in the country, less than 5% is consumed locally. So about 95% is up for export. Of all the coffee that we export, if we place ourselves in the global coffee trade, we're about just less than 2% in terms of the global coffee exports in the trade. So, like Henry Kenyua is saying, you guys can stop growing coffee. The world will not notice. But you will notice. From a time period when you used to, export over 150,000 tons in a season, in a year, now we are dealing with about 35,000 tons. Something has gone wrong, and that's why he was telling us where the rain started beating us in the late 80s and then in the 90s, and things just went south. If we compare ourselves, Henry, to the countries around us, remember in the 70s when there was a whole issue of Kenya and Uganda and Chepkube and people getting coffee crossing over Chepkube. Now, how is Uganda doing? How is Rwanda doing? And the other countries that do coffee, Ethiopia?
This is actually a very, very sad situation to report, that we are actually now the sick child of this East African community with regards to coffee. We are trading almost everybody. Ethiopia is way, way ahead. They are doing, I think, more than 8,000, bags of coffee. So they are, Uganda, in the last 5 years, when we have, in fact, the last 10 years or so, when we have regressed to a third of what we used to produce, Uganda has moved on 5 times. They are now doing about 5,000 tons of, so they have moved 5. When other countries, actually, this I saw this data the other day. Even Uganda, even Tanzania are ahead of us. So in East Africa, we can talk big, But when it comes to where it matters, volumes and value, we are not doing as well as we should. And therefore, we have an opportunity to look at what is, and I think that's why it's important to look at the coffee bill. What are these other guys done better that we can copy and see how we can go through about, or we can go on with it. And I think that's the point that the current coffee bill that's being read by CS Peter Munya and his team is really addressing those issues. And I said before, there are two issues of that needed to be done, is like maybe three. Number one is farmers need to be paid promptly, paid well and paid promptly. Secondly, the issue of transparency, ensure there is proper transparency. And thirdly, the issue of effective regulation. Because I think if you look at the other countries, what they have done, whether it's Uganda, Ethiopia, they have had very, very strong regulation from the government. Here, what we did when in the name of reform, we weakened the regulator, very, very, very significant. And weakening the regulator, that left the farmers at the mercy of whoever was at the market. So we have a lot of private players, whether it will be millers, marketers. Some are great guys who have invested and supported farmers across the industry, and others who are outrightly thugs in suits, who have really freed farmers across in so many places. So and all that, the reason why that happens is when you don't have effective regulation. So that is where we see the issues now the new bill is trying to address. Uganda, farmer can sell their coffee from the cherry. When they say they can decide who do I sell to, whether individually, as a cooperative, and decide it at that point. Then somebody does the process and moves forward. In Kenya now, what even the new bill is trying to address, they actually address particularly the issue of how do we ensure that when coffee is sold, the farmer is paid immediately. Because we had cases where coffee will be sold like now. I think today is it the 29th coffee? Today the coffee exchange will be closing. I think from now for this season they'll be started in like October and they are closing. Today will be like the last. Today Tuesday will be the last for this season until maybe open again in June, July. Before, coffee will be sold in January and then farmers are paid like in July. But right now, as you have seen, immediate coffee is sold, farmers are paid. Yeah. And that is part of the reforms, what the reform is pushing, that immediate coffee is sold without the auction. Within 14 days, coffee need to be money need to be in the farmer. So I think these are some of the areas that this is looking at addressing to ensure that we have, we used to teach our neighbors how to do things. They are teaching us, but it is okay, it is what it is. What can we learn and how do we move forward with that?
Mr. Kinyo, there's something that I've always found puzzling, and maybe you can explain it. I'm dovetailing into what you're saying. There are countries in the world that are known to be some of the largest exporters of coffee. You're talking about Switzerland, you're talking about Germany, you're talking about Italy. And I don't think they even have a single coffee bush in their country, unless... how do they then get to this position where, by being some of the largest exporters of coffee, it means coffee as a product is a huge income earner for the country, and yet they don't grow it?
No, it is not. It is actually the same. The coffee, tea, chocolate, you have Switzerland, they have never even seen a cocoa tree grows. But I think we need to really look at the history. All these were largely the colonial, there's a lot of colonial legacy into it. All these were they were extractive industries. These colonies were parts to support the kingdom, support their masters. And the idea was to extract everything, labor, their natural resources, everything, and go add value, create jobs and create incomes on the other side. Unfortunately, that one has not changed in a large way. If you look at it in the grand way of things, from an African perspective, a national perspective, and even from a commodity perspective, a lot has not really changed. And so we find that right now we have a lot of some studies, I would say, quote unquote, demonstrate why it is always better to add value outside and not here. And therefore, they have to be very, very difficult decisions. And I think that, in fact, even that's some of the big coffee bill is looking at it. How do you ensure that? How do you enforce a lot of processing locally? How do you ensure that? Because you find guys buying your green beans, do add value, then send you the finished product that could have been done here. So I think that's really the problem. You find that those countries, from the word go, from their forefathers, were Jipanga, and that is that we could Jipanga. So in that way, it is our time now Because as they say, usipojipanga utapangwa. If you yourself are not ready, the other guy will be prepared to take advantage of you and such is life. And it is what it is. It's what is happening, and that is what must be reformed if you have to talk about any commodity from Africa, benefiting farmers, creating jobs, creating incomes for our people. Those are the areas that we have to look at and look at it more seriously, both from the but also from the investment. Because challenges you find that, and I think in fact that is one area that even the Coffee Act is trying to address, is even the issues of research. You find even as a country, whether it's coffee, we've not been funding that research. So you expect a certain donor, whether it's a bilateral to fund, when they fund research, they don't fund research to support your country. They fund research, who pays the piper, who calls the tune. And that is why now the COVID says, how can we as a country also start supporting strongly our research in coffee research institutions? How can we support our marketing, from our, and this is what one of the Coffee Act is also trying to look at, because when we have all these marketing support, research support, being supported by external, there are nothing against external donors, but I like to the objective. If this coffee is so important to you as a country, why can't we invest in it? And that is now some of the areas that the Coffee Act is trying to address and must be done quickly to ensure that we have our people, our researchers saying, how do we ensure we produce this quality for this market? But not the other guy just telling us, like, you guys, you cannot grow that. It's not the same science, but they're trying to just tell you cannot, simply because to maintain the status quo. Because as they say, nobody will be happy when you're taking food from their plate. They always try to cover it.
Mr. Kenya, let me ask this question. Are we then saying that this act that we are speaking of, while addressing these anomalies, can actually get us to a point where we are doing what these other countries do, so that we ourselves can also become a major exporter of our own coffee?
Absolutely. I think it's because, when you look at, first of all, the idea is to have when you have a very structured and effective regulation and development. And that's why they're proposing coming up back of the coffee board that will address the issue of markets, that will address the issue of development. Because right now, whether it's development, the input and development. So that, I think, and not just a board, but board that is well facilitated. The industry, they're covering a little bit of that cost. Then having the Coffee Research Institute addressing some of those issues that need to be done. And also providing incentives for those who really want to process here more. Because ideally, coffee, we can say the commodity that is globally traded is the green bean, which is what we sell. And it is, that's what we sell, that's what we export. And there's nothing wrong as long as we're able to access them. But what this law and any other need to do is also to diversify. There are so many other markets. True, we have the traditional markets, we have the green beans is what we need to go for. But there are other markets coming up that will require, whether it's Dubai, whether it's Malaysia, that will require a little bit of maybe some of the roasted beans, some other packaged products. So we need to look more. The word from the marketing side is diversification. How do we do it and diversify? How do we create incentives to a local process, a local industry, to ensure that we diversify our coffee. We have different products that we can avail to the African market and also to the global market. So there's quite a number of these issues are being addressed, because right now we all sell 80%, like all the whole what we sell, the 95 whatever our coffee. That one we're all selling it at clean beans, what we call the green beans. That is what is in Ghana bags, exported in Ghana bags, and folks now, the Germans, the Italians, and the rest now go do whatever it is. They because most of it they also drink quite a bit of it, and then they go and package it and for their consumers.
Right. Okay. So I'm looking at this process of reform now and saying that so many things happening along this reform line, and you're saying that at least get back to where it was before in terms of exporting to that 150,000 tons per year. Below a third of that is happening now. It would mean that the input then would have to increase, and there were quite a number of people through this process where things went wrong, got frustrated, and threw their arms up. Large tracts of land that they cut down their bushes and decided to do something else with. Through the process of reform, is there a possibility, would there be something for those farmers to look forward to and say, can we get back into the fold? And would there be an encouragement for them to say, come back in and join us? Because you need the input on one hand, they also need the livelihood on the other hand.
Yes. No, I think that's a very good question, and there are things that unfortunately will not change. If you look at Kiambu County, the data is what maybe showing that they have lost about 12,000 hectares of used to be coffee. Is now that will not come back because Runda was coffee. Runda is not going to be coffee again. The whole of Dindigwa, all that is not going to be coffee again. The whole of Miga and Tatu cities and all these are not going to be coffee. If it is Nyeri, the whole of Kingongwa, they're not going to be coffee again. However, the point we have is that if we look at other areas, the south reef, and looking at Nandi. In fact, the data is from Nandi was one of the leading counties in planting new coffee. So we have other areas that already have, that is Nandi, Trans Nzoia, some of part of Kerisho, part of Narok, part of Baringo. When it comes to building up the volume, you have to play two games. These new areas that is now the upcoming news, that is the South East, and then for not growing, which are not traditional coffee areas. That one we need a lot of support in introducing new crops. So increase new land and a coffee. And that is happening and need to be, and I think even the bill is looking at it, supporting provision of seedlings, and then with the county government providing extension and such. However, in these other traditional coffee producing areas, that is the one currently producing over 70% of the coffee we have, that is Kiambu, Muranga, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Embu, Tharaka Nithi, and Meru, and Machakos. Machakos actually produces coffee, and people sometimes say not to think Machakos produces coffee. So these areas, what is the game that there we have to play what I call the productivity game. The productivity game ensuring that the few trees we have, the few bushes we have there, we renew them, but also provide the input, and then ensure that we have, we ensure that now we are able to increase the volume. Right now, on average, we are doing 2 kilos per bush of tree. Easily, guys, without with proper input, people do 10. In the 80s, we used to, on average, about 15. So if we can actually get enough input, and that's one part area. If you look at the new act, if we look, the part of the coffee board will also be establishing an input scheme that will be able to support that. So this being addressed in that manner, and also if we look at also the role within the act, the role of the county government is well spelled out, because agriculture is fully devolved. But then we have this issue there is the legal part that is dealt at the national level. So these issues is the act spelled out in how to ensure, number one, there is the input. And input, we are talking fertilizer, we are talking of, in fact, input, you need to look at it from even, not even the fertilizer, not even from research. Because, what seedlings do we need? What is the best seedlings in Kirinyaga, the same in Nandi, the same in Trans Nzoia. So get that research. Then get these seedlings available. And that's why Coffee Research Institute is being revived and supported financially to provide that. Then you have the normal input that we have the coffee board will set a program. Set away from a legal perspective, set a very clear framework of how farmers inputs to be available to the farmers. That the right input at the right time in the right form, and also they are able to in the manner that farmers can afford and access them.
Mr. Kinyua, let me ask this question. There's a lot of land that previously coffee was grown on, which has now turned into real estate. Does this new act or this new program is it looking into introducing coffee into new areas of Kenya, looking for additional capacity so that coffee can be grown in larger quantities?
Mm-hmm. I think it's basically that's what I'm still looking at it in terms of, and this will be more. I'm actually, maybe this one I'll say it. I don't know. I know my brothers from Central Kenya need to know this, that in the next 10 years, 5 years, I think that the new coffee areas will be the South Coast, the Central and South Rift. All these are the areas that are growing maize now. They are taking coffee very, very serious. We have a lot of that coming in, and that's what I say, strengthening of coffee research institution will support the provision of the seedling, because you need the seeds and the seedlings in large quantities, and that now is the issue. Then when it comes to the input, in the fertilizer and all that, ensuring those are there, but also the other area that are produced, the central area that have been producing coffee also is now looking at it. How do we ensure these areas are provided with inputs to increase their productivity, and also there is transparency in the handling and the marketing of the coffee to make sure that farmers not only feel, but they can experience real income in their, they need to have more money in their pocket, and then they can be encouraged to go back to farm. In fact, some of these areas in Central, it's not so bad, actually. I can tell, like when I was at CC in Nyeri, Nyeri had about 14 million coffee bushes. About 2 million had been like complete neglect. We have about 12 million that are picked in one form or the other. In the whole country, we have a similar, that if this one, we have a very clear program of input. In 2-3 years, you can actually ramp up from the current you can easily double the current production by just provide the input. In 3 years, you can be back to 100,000 and 100,000, and in 5 you'll be 150, and we'll be back to where we are, and even better.
I'm getting a comment here from Noana Siali, who's an expert in the field as well. And it says, extension services have to be improved. Farmers need to be trained on soil testing to improve the yield. And he basically goes ahead to say just what you've said. Farmers are now getting about 3 kilograms per plant per year. They should be getting about that, and they are currently getting just about 0.7 kilograms per plant. You're saying even there's a time when you used to get about even 15. The other thing that he's talking about is support of this sector by the county governments. Agriculture is devolved. If a county government is allocating less than 5% of its budget to agriculture, is this sufficient to kickstart this sector really?
No, I think that's, I don't know. I think no. He raised very pertinent points in terms of the current production. We can easily, with providing the right extension services and the input, we can triple the current production from 2 kilos to 6 easily. Farmers, the same farmers, in fact, I see the age of the farmers. The interesting is what has not been changing is the same farmers who are there. So the same farmers who are producing 10 kilos per bush, they are doing 2 because the support system that existed was not there. In fact, it's unfortunate that we have seen a lot of extension services being downplayed, the importance of it being downplayed. It is important to say this. Extension services support, it is as important as teachers are to the education sector, or doctors and health workers to the health sector. If you cannot have, you have a health sector without without nurses, doctors, and other health workers. You cannot say you have education system without teachers and another support system. This likewise, you cannot say you have an agriculture sector without the extension system, and that one we killed long time ago from the structured adjustment programs of the 80s. Do you know, like from 1986? The whole Kenya never employed extension worker until 2006 during Kibaki government. They employed a few, and then from there, so what you'll find is now, I can almost say without a fear of contract, almost every county, the extension workers, like 50 to 70% are over 50 years. And in the next 5 years, if counties will not have invested, we will not even have any extension service. And then the problem then we also have, we talk about bringing on the private sector, but we've not had a very clear, we've not had a very clear program of how to support that private sector. So we are talking private sector, but we have a real plan for the private sector. So these are the areas that you see, as now I think, counties are currently now, almost all the counties are doing 5-7%. I'm like, guys, we have to do minimum 10. That has been accepted globally to affect the effect for this sector. And I think once the counties look at that, it's not only the coffee that will be, it's all the other agricultural commodities.
What can coffee do for the country's economy in terms of its potential? What can actually happen with what is currently available in the country? If you did a forecast and say, what could it contribute to an elevated economic profile for Kenya, what can it actually offer?
I think it's like we are saying right now, we say this year it offered, we are saying it just did, this is just pure income per income. It did 17 million. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we say it did 17 billion. So that one we say we can easily do 5 times that. That is now directly forex income. The other thing that coffee can do and will do very significant was done is also create a lot of employment in the rural areas. From we have the youth in extension services, youth in new grafting, harvesting, and also the particular new law is also coming up of also making it easier for even other for roasting, to have licensing for making use for the roasting. So we have young people and other, investing in that in terms of how to roast their coffee, and we start getting more coffee consumed. So there's quite a lot of the issue that a lot of benefits that can come out of this when coffee is well supported.
You're looking at all the reforms that you've talked about, and I can't help but think about the ongoing reforms in the tea sector and the kind of pushback that the ministry is getting with the implementation of the reforms. There is a new law that has been passed, but an implementation of it is being challenged in court. There are all these, elections. Do we have elections? Do we not have elections? And I'm just wondering, the same kind of players who've been benefiting from the haphazardness of the coffee sector, are they not, digging in to push back against these reforms? And what plans do you have in place to mitigate that?
I think that's a good point. It is not, and this is not really unique to. It's not very unique to the Kenyans and the coffee sector. Everywhere, when we have any public reforms, all these issues are expected, because for a reform, for there to be a need for reforms, it demonstrates that something was not working. But it doesn't mean that something was not working. What happens is something was benefiting from that lacuna, from that weakness that was there. So when you are fixing it, you can say you are actually so they will fight.
Mr. Kinyo, let me ask this question. Is there any law,
is that you have a committed, a committed executive. Right now, I think there is a very clear plan to make sure everybody is involved. Hello?
Yes.
Yes, to make sure that everybody is involved. So we'll definitely have people digging in, and this has always been the when you serve private sector. Because what happens in every public policy, the losers lose immediately. So the losers lose immediately, but the benefits take long to be realized. So when the losers are powerful, they fight to the end, because this was their livelihood, and that is why you see quite a lot of that. And therefore, as the person pushing for reform, because the leader of the reforms, it is very important for the success. And in this case, the good thing is that the person pushing these reforms is the current CS, Peter Munya, who is already known not to have any fear in creating impact, but also try to make sure everybody is involved. I saw a lot of that, in fact, when I followed him with the last one December. He went all over the country trying to do this public participation, taking views from all over, and taking views from farmers, from everybody. That demonstrates that his willingness to ensure that all the views are taken care. However, at the same time, being ready to address those that might decide it is the time to fight and dig in. So there's a lot I can tell you, I think, and he has been very clear on that. He has a very clear plan how to make sure that once the reforms begin, there's no turning back.
Henry Kinyo, we want to thank you very much for joining us this morning. Henry is the chairman of the New Kenya Planters Cooperative Union, New KPCU, speaking to us about the reforms in the coffee sector and what's happening now for the benefit of the farmers. There's a bill that's being pushed by the Agriculture Ministry, going to go to Parliament, will be debated. Let's see how that comes in and whether it actually improves and brings benefit to the farmers of coffee in the country. Asante sana, Henry. And time for us to take a break as well on KTN Home. Join us on SpiceFM, because the next hour we have a conversation about a story that's actually showing the kind of gender-based violence in our communities. A story that's talking about gender-based violence, this time meted against men in Tana River County. We'll be speaking with one of the activists who have been talking about gender-based violence lately. The conversation continues, and remember, jobs.standardmedia.co.ke, that's jobs.standardmedia.co.ke, is a portal by the Standard Group where people who are seeking employees are advertising their jobs, and you can go in there and find all the jobs that have been advertised. And the best thing about it is you can subscribe to Job Alerts, which will give you relevant jobs from across the country being posted to your email or via SMS. Good morning. Kenya's biggest conversation continues 5 to 9.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive, and of course...
Spice FM. Nyeri.
All right, so the conversation continues at 5 minutes to 9. Reforms in the coffee sector. I mean, it's a sad thing to hear that we were once the leader in the region, and now we are trailing everybody in the region. Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, in terms of coffee. Coffee production, coffee earnings for farmers. And this is, over time, just over a number of years, we were regressing while our neighbors were basically just advancing. And if we had asked Henry, he would have been honest enough to tell us some of those experts who went and made sure that the sectors in those countries were working were Kenyans. Henry himself worked in Tanzania for a number of years as an agriculture consultant, working even for the government of Tanzania. And very many other Kenyans have also worked in Ethiopia, in Uganda, in Rwanda, working for those governments to implement some of the policies that have been drafted by experts in this country. But for some reason, some strange demon, we are not able to implement them here. We actually make sure that they are not working, and other countries just go, implement, move.
And you have the resource here, and that's what I was saying in terms of what can it actually do for this country as a revenue earner, and you have it right here. We have countries around the world who are making millions of dollars with a commodity that they don't even grow. One of them being coffee, and it's resident right here. And there's opportunity to do something with it. And I think this is something that needs to be done yesterday. It's not something that you can dilly-dally with it, especially against the fact that you continuously look for funds to run the country. And you have something right here that can actually assist in that.
A lot that could be done. A crop that was producing about 15 kilos per tree is now producing 2 per tree. And all because that farmer has not received the support that he required. A lot of things. Look at soil. Look at how can you make sure that your soil is not degrading. Look at the inputs and the cost of inputs. Look, how can we support you to make sure that you're growing from that 15 kilos per plant to even increasing to 20.
When you talk about tea trading centers like the one that people refer to as in Dubai, the very people who set it up came to this country and found there was a loophole in this country. We could have done exactly the same.
What's happening in Dubai?
Exactly
in
the
Mombasa.
same thing. We could have done it. But that opportunity came, lost it.
And it's thugs. It's thugs who basically just come in and they're looking at it and from the point of, it's okay. I make 1 billion shillings every year. I'm the one who's making 1 billion and nobody else is making 1 billion shillings. I'm good.
The worst thing is when you look at the tea industry is that the one organization that actually represents the majority of the locals, the tea farmer, the Monanchi, okay? You will find that they perhaps end up being one of the biggest culprits when it comes to this.
Yep.
Because yes, there are benefits that they reap, but you don't see it trickling down to the farmer.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And this is by design of people who are playing in that sector.
Yes.
And those people are so powerful that they're able to then sponsor their lackeys into government.
To control that 1 billion in a year that
you
you
the 1
earn.
billion that they earn.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable.
And make sure
I'm
nobody
doing
touches
well.
it. That's what they're actually there doing.
Oh my goodness.
Protecting that money. Whereas the folks who are providing that 1 billion are suffering.
We should have a national conversation on what's... Anyway, so keep it right here. In the next hour, let's talk about gender-based violence. It's a big thing. It's a big point of concern. And we have seen several civil society organizations even addressing the press conference last week, saying a lot is happening and this should be declared a national disaster. Should it? Why? That's a conversation. Good morning. It's 9 a.m.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Traffic.
Right, so a minute to that time where that transition phase has checked out and are no longer dealing with that anymore this morning. Going towards Luna Park for most public service vehicles. It continues again tomorrow is what we are being told. And so all vehicles that would ordinarily stop at the railways bus stop would now stop at Green Park, which is the former Luna Park. All right. So a lot of folks complaining about having to walk from one place to another because of this. Still looking at how best it would work. All right. On Mombasa Road, it's moving very slowly towards the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. That's going to take some time. Also coming off Jogo Road as you get to the City Stadium roundabout. A little bit of traffic then connecting with Landis. Some also coming from industrial area. Going to keep watching this one and see how it opens up. You stuck somewhere? Do let us know and we can at least warn others. Find a good route, tell us that as well. We can get those who are stuck out. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This is the fourth hour of the show, and we begin with today's proverb. C.T. Muga.
A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse to the grave.
A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse to the grave. Enough said. Enough said. Tell us about this story in Tana River City.
Well, it's interesting in that it's not every day one actually gets to read or hear of a situation where the person who's complaining about being physically violated and physically harmed is a man, and the complaint and the issue is that women are turning on them and meting out, should we say, very purposed and very directed violence at them. And among the reasons that are given is that as men, they are not seen to be providing adequately for the family. So it's not just a question of being beaten. It's a question of being denied even entry into your own home and being told, my friend, if you are unable to provide for this family, don't even come here. So which means you are banned. But as I was reading this particular story, one of the things that struck me is how is it that you have a certain reversal of roles? Because a lot of what we read is this sort of situation, but it is men who are meting out the violence. It is men who are actually placing women in this uncomfortable position where they don't even seem to have a voice in their own homes. And here we have a situation where we're reporting, well, cases of men not having a strong enough voice in their own homes.
And this is caused by economic hardship. So the story in The Nation on page 12 gives the story of a couple of men. One of them is Gadi Farah, who says he has become a refugee in his own home, only guaranteed of peace if he brings food. He's 55 years old. He says he has endured physical abuse from his wife and escaped death as many times as he can remember. I've been beaten with firewood, at times with sticks. He has even attempted to slaughter me using a machete several times, but I escaped. He says this has happened since 2019. Just before the pandemic, he lost most of his livestock in the 2019 floods that affected Tana River. He was left with little to manage, got into charcoal business, ran into conflict with the Kenya Forest Service officers in March 2020. He was fined more than 15,000 shillings. He did not have 15,000 shillings yet to go and sell off his goats, even though his wife did not approve of it. I, however, had no choice since my freedom was more important. He needed to secure his freedom, sold his goats. Ha! Back at home, they had nothing more to depend on, and both were forced to find other means to survive. From then on, his wife became hostile, denying him food whenever he brought nothing home. On the few occasions that he did manage to get some food, he would only be served after the children and his wife had had their fill. Any effort to confront the matter ended in violence. Tried to call in elders to address the issues he was facing, but they failed and left him to resolve it his own ways.
And this issue of the pandemic has actually made things worse, infinitely worse. I mean, they even cite a case where a man was actually in a fight with his second wife and got killed.
Wow.
Yes, he died as a result of it.
Wow.
Now, it's a wow situation because men are dying in a situation where there is violence within the home. And yet what we are accustomed to listening and hearing about is women dying in similar situations. The tables have clearly turned.
And it's everywhere. Even in terms of women, they, according to human rights organizations, there's an increase in the number of women who are also getting affected by this. Human rights activists are calling on the government to declare sexual and gender-based violence a national disaster. A number of organizations called a press conference last week, and these were Haki Africa, Feminists for Peace, Rights and Justice, Grassroots Women Initiative Kenya, Red Vest Movement, K-Haki, Superb CBO, Kangemi Grassroots HRDS Movement. They were all in Nairobi holding a press conference, and they were urging the state to put stringent measures in place to eradicate the vice. They're also challenging the government to set aside funds to fight SGBV. They are calling on the establishment of safe houses for victims, as well as making the prevention and redress of violence against women a key part of its national response plans for COVID-19 pandemic.
The issue regarding women has been highlighted. But with reference to men don't usually speak out on such issues.
They don't.
And it is also reported that many then go into depression as a result of this, and many die.
Yep.
Because they will not talk. Men will not come out in the open and say, my wife is beating me on a daily basis.
Yep. Or the one day they snap, they go into extreme violence and death occurs on the other side.
Yes.
So the man ends up actually killing the woman. And it's recorded, obviously, that this is femicide.
Would be interesting to note that this increased number of men who then have been reported of being abused, how then they're reporting, because they're clearly talking about it. Are they being induced to speak? Has there been a situation so terrible that they're forced to do so? Have they been hospitalized? The reasons under which, or the reasons for which now they're speaking out, I think then is important to look at, because it could be that it's becoming so bad that they realize that, if we don't speak about this thing, we will die. So there are reasons as to why they are now sharing it.
There's a human rights organization actually working in Tana River, and this is on gender-based violence. And one person called Ralia Hassan says 4 out of 10 men in the community are experiencing violence at home. And she notes that because men tend to keep silence in the face of such atrocities, a large number of them now, what you're saying, CT, depression, death, and all. But 4 out of 10, that's a high number.
But consider also some of them, you see, this reversal of roles in a sense has come about as a result of changes within the social and economic structure of the community that there's nothing they could do about. It's reported that some people lost, for instance, their livestock, okay, during a flood. Some went into business they couldn't sustain. In short, their way of life has changed significantly. And in that change of a way of life, so has the social construct of that particular community. And it appears that the social structure that involved wazees or elders who could resolve this issue, that has also changed because elders seem to be giving such matters a wide berth.
And they're also powerless.
Yes. Yes. So this is an overhaul of a certain social system that existed.
So should gender-based violence be declared a national disaster by the government? Let's bring in one of the activists who was addressing a press conference on Friday. The executive director of Haki Africa, Hussein Khalid, is on the line with us. Good morning, Hussein.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's first of all start with the premise of your press conference on Friday, where you were calling on the government to declare this a national disaster. What were the grounds for that?
Thank you very much. Let me first of all begin by commending SpiceFM for having this very, very important discussion, particularly at this point in time in our country. The press conference we held last week was as a result of statistics that came to the fore, communicating the seriousness of the matter. Last year, between January to December, we had over 5,000 cases of gender-based violence reported in various gender desks across the country. And this was a 36% increase compared to what we had in the previous year. And on Thursday, just a day before our press conference, we saw Professor Phobia, the CS in charge of gender, holding a press conference and giving us this. And we were a bit concerned that the government is actually behaving like an NGO, giving statistics and telling us how bad it is, and that the situation is getting out of hand. And we felt the urge, of asking the government to do more than just give us statistics, because they are the primary institution in the country that is supposed to deal with these issues. And while we appreciate that, they are acknowledging the magnitude of the problem, we felt, they were supposed to do more than that. They're supposed to tell us how they will work with, for example, gender desks in police stations to curb the vice. We wanted to hear how they will allocate budgets so that we get better responses to GBV issues. We wanted to hear how they will put up a policy and legal framework to address SGBV in our country. So we felt it's important for us to come out almost immediately and try to drive the government towards declaring GBV a national disaster. The thing about having an issue as a national disaster, it means every state department, every ministry will then need to plan on how they will address that particular issue within their ministry and within their department. And we felt if we were able to get that done, then we'll be able to marshal the entire government to start addressing SGBV seriously. That is why we held that press conference to push the government to do more than just issuing statistics and facts and all that. We appreciated that, but we were very concerned that the government was behaving like another NGO.
Okay, so now, as we're looking at these issues, Khalid, the question then comes in is that what would we expect to see rolled out with policy change, with basically everybody taking this and applying every available resource to this? What would we see, or what we need to see in terms of policy change? 1. 2, we're saying then apply resources. In a lot of cases, this means money. How would we see the direct translation of money being allocated to now getting cases of GBV reduced?
Let me also just acknowledge and appreciate the discussion that was going on before I was brought on board, and to say that the SGBV actually cuts across. And it's true that men are actually suffering in their homes. The statistics you gave us in Tana River, 4 out of 10, that's actually a very high number. I had not come across that, but of course we will also follow up with the civil society partners in Tana River to just establish how or why that is the case. But in terms of legal and policy structure, first of all, we have the SOA, or the Sexual Offences Act. The first thing we need to do is to ensure there is public awareness of this law. People need to understand that sexual harassment is not something that we as a country, through our legal framework, condone. In Haki Africa's report, for example, at the court, gender-based violence increased by over 900% last year. 900% compared to the previous year. And if you actually look at how this came to be, you'll find that the COVID-19 pandemic had a direct link to the rise in numbers. Most of the violations were happening at night when the curfew was on, so many of the victims could not actually go outside to seek help. You also had violations that happened during the cessation of movement. So, for example, you have a domestic worker who is working in County A, but his home is in County B, or her home is in County B. So when she's being violated, she can't run away and go back home, whether it's during the day or during the night. And mainly, we actually noted it's the economic vulnerability of women that rendered them, so susceptible to violence. You see, many women in Kenya, according to the government statistics, over 85% of women in Kenya actually rely on day-to-day casual labor. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, it actually meant majority of them were not able to find means and ways of accessing that economic activity. Of course, because of lockdown, social distancing, the restaurants were closed down. For example, at the coast, the tourism sector completely went down. So these women had no way of actually earning money or, some ways of putting food on the table at the end of the day. So they remained completely reliant on men. And men, unfortunately, took advantage of that situation. And they went out, beating them up, harassing them, assaulting, and stuff like that. And it's very unfortunate that, it's us as men who are responsible for these violations. And the worst part, further worse, is actually majority of those who experienced violence. The violence was from a man closely related to them, or very, a husband or a son. You had incidences where children were beating up their mothers because there was no food on the table. And if not immediate family, then it was either a close friend or a relative who is very well known to the victim. So these are some of the issues that we think the legal framework will be able to address. If there is awareness, if people know that doing this is wrong, and if women understand that if this is done to me, then I can actually go out and seek justice. That is very important. The second point you asked is about resources. So these resources, number one, for example, we have proposed in every police station, there's supposed to be a gender desk with a gender officer. So we were proposing to triple the number of gender officers in police stations, and more so to have women, womaning those desks. For example, we have a case of Bamba police station where we've had very many issues of gender violence, and the officer at the gender desk is a male officer. This takes away, the confidence of a female victim to report, because they feel this is the same sex that has actually violated my rights, and I'm going to report them. So you always find women saying they will always take the side of the perpetrator. So number one, you are suggesting to triple the number of gender officers within the police station. The second thing we were proposing, and I think you also mentioned it, is to have what we call safe houses, where women can actually go when they're in trouble, because when you persevere, so when you're beaten and you're just seated there, because you have nowhere else to go, it's extremely, extremely sad. So you are there because you're feeling, where else will I go? So let me just persevere, let me just take the blows, let me just take the kicks, because I have no other choice. But if we give people choices, we tell them, look, if you're in this situation, there's a safe house you can go to. You will be taken care of. Your issues will be addressed, and you'll be able to get justice, and will help you start afresh. I think that will be a beginning of a new life for many women in the country who are facing.
Let's take a break at this point. Having a conversation with Hussein Khalid. He is the Executive Director of Haki Africa, talking about sexual and gender-based violence. His organization, plus others, came out on Friday and said they'd like to urge the government to declare sexual and gender-based violence a national disaster. And we're having that conversation. Do you agree with the civil society organizations and human rights activists who are calling for this? Do you agree with them? Do you not? We'd like to hear from you. At some point, we're going to open up the phone lines. For now, let's see how the weather is going to look like for the rest of the day. Good morning.
SpiceFM.
It's getting hot in here. oh, everybody steals. It's better a thief who brings something small back. And I say to myself, there's no better thief. A thief is a thief, period.
All those bribes, how much they are getting per year, how much inconvenience they are causing, as much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted.
The truth is, we are a tribal nation. Because if we were not tribal, and I want to go back to this, you cannot continue walking around with a mug which is clean outside and it's rotten inside.
We have become a fuliza country. We have mortgaged our country because of debt.
You've got one chef working and the assistant chef wakati anatakana koroge unga nini hayuko.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The weather with SpiceFM.
Light rain in certain parts of Nairobi this morning at 19. It'll go to highs of 24 today and lows of 17. It's mostly cloudy. Nyeri at 18, highs of 24 and lows of 15. 15 will also be the low in Nakuru, where it's partly sunny at 18. Mostly cloudy conditions in Eldoret at 17. Experience highs of 23. We'll see highs of 29 in Kisumu, where it's mostly cloudy at 22. Mostly cloudy conditions in Kakamega at 23. Highs will be 28. Continues to rain in some parts of Mombasa at 30. Just going to highs of 31. Highs of 31 in Malindi as well. Light rain at 29. Mostly sunny conditions in Kampala and at 22. It'll go to highs of 26. It's raining in Dar es Salaam, still at 27. Highs of 30, lows of 25. Highs of 25 in Johannesburg. It's sunny at 20, warming up just a bit. Partly sunny conditions at 27 in Lagos. It'll go to highs of 33. 33 will also be the recorded high in Kinshasa today. Mostly sunny conditions right now at 25. It's sunny at 22 in Beijing. It'll go to just that as a high and coming down to lows of 8. Sunny conditions in Paris at 6. Highs of 19. Highs of 15 in London, where it's sunny at 4. And coming into Tuesday, New York will see 10 degrees. It'll go to highs of 17 and back down to lows of 11.
Spice up your life.
It's 22 minutes after 9. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation continues with Haki Africa Executive Director Hussein Khalid.
Let me ask this question, sir.
Yes.
Somehow, from just the article that we were looking at on page 12 of The Nation, it seems to be that violence seemed to be meted out as a possible form of solution. And I'm concerned. What is it that brings a community or people within a community to the point where they believe that issues must be resolved through violence?
That's a very good question. And for us, particularly as lawyers, we get very concerned by these issues. For example, you find people when there's a suspected thief, then they call, when they're lynching that thief, they say that's mob justice. There's no way that is mob justice. The Constitution is very clear that every person is innocent until proven guilty by a court of law. Guilt cannot be confirmed by a community. Even if myself as Hussein Khalid, I see someone snatching a lady's handbag and I have recorded that on my camera and I show that to the people, you know, that is still not guilt confirmed. The only institution that has the mandate to confirm guilt is the court of law. So this is something we need to go out and talk to people about. So when you see someone stealing and then you decide to lynch those people. Last month in Mombasa, for example, 4 people were lynched by a mob. And you see, to them, that is justice because they're saying we are tired. Insecurity has just gotten out of hand. Every day people are hacked to death by this marauding gang, Wakali Kwanza and others. So they're taking the law into their own hands. And when this happens, it means that the justice system is not delivering. People are losing faith in the justice system. They're saying if we arrest these people, we take them to the police station, the next day they'll be out in the streets doing the same things again. So it's the same with the GBV. We have issues within our communities. We have concerns. For example, I think earlier on you were talking about men being battered. So possibly they're thinking, I've reported this. You said they've talked to the communities, they've gone to the police stations, but they're not getting any solution out of that. So then they end up retaliating. And this is a natural human reaction for both men and women. Even for women, when you push them to the wall, we have received many incidences where a woman says it's self-defense. This man was actually attacking me. He wanted to beat me up, to kill me. He's done this several times. So this time, I just had to defend myself. I just took the knife and stabbed my husband. So, I mean, when the justice system fails to deliver, when people feel they are not in a position to have issues addressed in an amicable way, when they feel that society is not there for them, then it's a natural reaction for any human being to protect themselves, not self-defense. So I think that we need to do more. One, we need to raise awareness amongst communities. Do not remain silent. When you see violence in your neighbor's home, when you see violence in your relative's home, you need to speak up. You need to make sure those people get the necessary help they need. When it's violence that is gotten out of hand, sometimes it's defilement. A father is perennially defiling his child or his daughter. Please report these cases. And in as much as we encourage mediation, there are certain cases where mediation does not offer solution. We are encouraging people to report these matters to the police so that they can be followed up through the criminal process. These are issues such as defilement.
I can hear already the bells ringing, Khalid, when now you're saying this, because in the moment when this is happening, there is not a system strong enough for somebody to be able, right now in Kenya, for somebody to be able to pick up the phone and call and say, I'm in a domestic situation and can some kind of help be accorded to me? It doesn't happen today. It's like what we watch in the movies, call 911 and within minutes there's somebody at your door. And they're there to sort out a domestic. It doesn't happen. So here's somebody who's wielding a machete at you, is drunk. In that moment, what are you going to do? Same thing for a man. Here is somebody who's attacking you in this manner. The system, I wouldn't even say it's not strong enough, doesn't exist where somebody can pick up the phone and make a phone call or ask for help. Calling on your neighbors, it doesn't happen. So in that, I mean, never am I advocating for violence in this manner, but it would appear that somebody in an attempt to protect their life then are going for the person who's coming against them. What do you do when you say, go report at the nearest police station, for example, and here's somebody who's literally going for your neck? What happens in those cases, against the law?
I think these are very, very important discussion, as I said, and I really, really want to thank SpiceFM for this. And this is exactly what we were saying when the government held their press conference and they released statistics. We were saying, look, you need to do more than that. You need to go a step further. That, helpline, for example, what are we doing to bring it into a reality? So that people actually know there's a helpline that we can reach on. There are 5,000 plus cases that were reported last year actually came through a helpline, but there is not enough awareness. And it's not even just awareness. Sometimes you would call this number, you don't get the necessary support that you need. So these are the steps that we are asking the government to take. I fully agree with you that we don't have a system in place to help particularly individuals who are at the moment, that right moment, they need help like immediately. And you see, help is not just through the phone line. You need to have systems in place. You need to have police stations available on the ground across the country. That's why we're saying, for example, triple the number of officers on gender desk, so that when a call comes in, if someone is attending to one case, then there's someone else who can rush to another case and another one who can also go to another case. But yes, I agree with you that at the moment we don't have that system, and this is what we're trying to do to push the government to have that system up and running and working, particularly for our women.
I also heard you, Khalid, as you were, enumerating the issues that you were raising by calling for sexual and gender-based violence to be declared a national disaster. You said we need better enforcement of the law. We need to see the establishment of gender desks at all police stations. We need the establishment of safe houses. And also you're explaining, those are very high numbers. When you say that gender-based violence rose by 900% in just 1 year in the coastal region in Mombasa, that's a very high number. Did you guys look back at the causes of this? I ask this having in mind a report on mental wellness of the citizens that also raised concern. And also looking at this particular story that's been highlighted here, this is just gender-based violence directed towards men, and these are husbands, not just any man on the street. This is somebody who's the head of a family, providing for their family, then suddenly they are unable to provide, and then they get into this conflict with their wives, and violence ensues. Is it not possible that one of the reasons why you're seeing this rise in gender-based violence, yes, there is that incident where this person, it's a power game. The person who is able to provide is taking advantage of this woman, for example, who's lost their source of income in the hotel industry. But also the issue of mental wellness, that it's because of the very many cases of people having mental issues that just come out in the form of violence. And how do we address that?
Thank you. And again, very, very important issue, and we need to reflect on that. And let me also say that these statistics, of course, we have facts and we can prove the statistics, but so far, not enough research has gone into the causes of why this has happened. So majority of us who are releasing these statistics, including government, are pointing fingers, of course, at mental wellness, the COVID-19 pandemic, the economic hardships that people are going through, because that's what we've had over the last 1 year or so. But I fully agree that we need to do further than that. There are people who are, I can say, are sick. It's not frustrations, it's not anything. They just want to feel dominating, and they just want to take charge, and they engage in violence and stuff like that. But majority of the cases that we've received are actually directly related to frustrations, for example. A woman feels this man is not working hard enough. Why is he just at home? She's not understanding that, opportunities are not there anymore. The jobs that this man we used to go to, make the daily bread and all that are not there anymore. So for her, she's frustrated. I have kids at home. They're crying. We haven't paid rent. The landlord is always on me because you're never around. We have bills to pay. People just find me here at home. And I just keep seeing you going in and out, and you're not bringing home anything. So frustrations build up. And for me, mental wellness, I think at the moment, our country is suffering. Mental wellness, I believe each and every person, including myself, including yourself, at this point in time, we are not where we were, for example, say last year. We need all of us to debrief. We need psychosocial support as a country. And these are some of the issues we're trying to push the government to start thinking about. Because if we proceed at this level, at this rate, then I fear statistics next year will even be worse. Now with the third phase upon us and, taxes going up, and no one is thinking about the mwananchi on the ground. Everyone is just pushing all their losses down the drain to where mwananchi is at. So we are seeing more frustrations. And if you look at statistics that we've had over the last 1 quarter compared to last year, it's far much worse. So it's about time the government did more than just give us the facts. We appreciate the acknowledging we have a problem in our country, but then we want them to do more. And that is how we're trying to push the government.
Let me ask this question, Khalid. Of the statistics that you have, would you say that a majority of many Kenyan families are experiencing this dire situation of violence, or would you say it's only a small number, or would you say that it is growing? And if it is, which sector of our communities are bearing the brunt of this?
I want to say the number is growing.
Yes.
It's definitely not the large majority, but our fear is that we are headed towards that direction. One thing for sure is that some form of violence, and violence is physical and also psychological. Every family, almost every family has experienced some form of violence, even if it's psychological, during the last 1 year or so. The number of physical violence is going up, and this is dangerous because if we don't then address the issue immediately, it means we are going to see more cases being reported.
Okay, so now, what do you, I'm just looking at it in terms of reality, what do you think the response is going to be? Again, looking at other issues where we said, or whether, task forces that had been then given the responsibility to find out what's going on in the country said this needs to be given national disaster status, emergency status right now, and something needs to be done about it. There are very many layers that need to be unpeeled to sort out this thing, because you're dealing with intimate relationships at home, you are dealing with young girls and young boys with their superiors, whether it be in school or wherever it is that they might be. So very many layers to be peeled from this thing. If we can use the parallel of the mental health, and we're saying then it needs the help then needs to be institutionalized, that across board then everybody needs to be in one mind and one understanding. Now, when it comes to SGBV, they're also looking at what in some cultures is accepted without realizing that it is actually a problem. Without realizing, then you're putting people into society that have come from a place of abuse and then needs to be sorted out. So it seems that it needs to be pulled apart on so many levels. And do you think that the response will be from a government that do they have the wherewithal, whether it's just resources, but even the policy and understanding, comprehension and willingness to then sort it out?
Yeah, I mean, we have to give credit where it's due. And I think, number one, we appreciate that the government has acknowledged that this is a problem. And it's talked about in different fora. We have different government authorities raising awareness about this issue. But that's our concern, that, that in itself is not enough. And I would totally agree with you that there are different layers. If you look at the example of Kilifi, for example, it's teenage pregnancy. You have the border riders. Families no longer have money to give their children to use matatus to go to school. So this girl has to walk 10 kilometers every day to school. And she can't do that 10 kilometers and 10 kilometers back. So she befriends a border rider somewhere. But this border rider wants to get paid. The girl doesn't have money. So a huge number of the teenage pregnancies in Kilifi, for example, is by the border sector. So the question is, in looking at the different layers, what is the role of the border sector in addressing teenage pregnancies? If you look at, for example, in schools, I think the other day we had a report, I think it was in Kisumu County, a headmaster who had impregnated 9 pupils in his school. Again, what is the role of NAT? What is the role of TSC in addressing GBV in schools? If you look at, for example, workplaces, after GBV rise in terms of last year, the second issue was a labor-related issue that had also shot up in terms of violation. You have women who are complaining when they go, for example, Easy Kazi and Mjengo. They're told if you want to work here, sexual favors, some of them are rapes, in workplaces and, such kinds of issues. Again, the FPE, Federation of Care Employers, what are they doing to address these issues? Even on the internet, cybercrime is quite high. You get people who are engaging in sexual activities and then they're quietly or secretly recording. You are with your girlfriend or with your boyfriend and you invite them to your home or to a hotel, but you have a hidden camera, you are recording, and then later on when issues are not good, you expose those videos and you show them out to social media. So it's a mix
of many issues. And I think this is where we need to have that national dialogue so that people can sit down, and it's only the government that has the resources, the capacity, the manpower to bring everyone together to address this. And we feel the government can only do that once they declare SGBV a national disaster, so that all of us can concentrate our efforts on addressing this vice in our society.
What do you think? Do you agree with Hussein Khalid and the other human rights organizations who are calling for sexual and gender-based violence to be declared a national disaster? We'd like to hear from you. Also, there are many people who could be listening and they'd like one or two issues of advice or some points of concern to raise. You can speak to Hussein Khalid. He is here with us. 0719-012-600 is the number to call, or SpiceFM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram. Any questions for Hussein Khalid? And whether you agree that we have reached a point where sexual and gender-based violence needs to be declared a national disaster so that all organs of government address this at some point. 20 minutes to 10 o'clock. Let's take a break, see how the roads are looking, and then the conversation continues.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive, and of course, SpiceFM KE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
Okay, so if it's a practice, then that means now all public service vehicles are going back to railways. It was just a 3-hour exercise to see how it would be. Let's see what it looks like tomorrow. And so that means you would, if you want, you know what that meant is that everybody who was on other parts also had to go to Green Park, and he had to walk across the CBD to go there. So it looks like it caused some mess for some folks this morning. Hopefully tomorrow it will be better. Coming off of Thika Road into the CBD, it's a little bit slow once you get to Ngara and then out towards the Globe Cinema roundabout, or rather overpass. Should be better in a few as traffic slows, or rather quickens up. Then also coming out of Westlands is looking good now into the CBD. Mombasa Road is a little bit slow all the way then from Cabanas through really to the Southern Bypass exit. So let's watch out for that one. But we're getting out of traffic hour soon enough. Shouldn't be too bad moving forward. Talk to us through the day. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
17 to 10.
94.4 Spice FM.
Conversation with Hussein Khalid, Executive Director of Haki Africa. His organization and several other human rights organizations addressed the media conference on Friday where they're calling on the government to declare sexual and gender-based violence a national disaster.
Well, from everything that we are hearing and everything we're reading, it appears to me that the social structure that we've believed in for as long as one can possibly remember is slowly being dismantled, one with the help of the pandemic that we currently have, and of course the issues, the social issues around the pandemic, unemployment, unavailability of resources, everything that could possibly go wrong seems to be going wrong, and it is showing the underbelly or it's testing the strength of the fabric of the social situation that we actually have. And it appears that the social structure is faring badly. It's being battered by this. And I heard Khalid saying that the government needs to come in, and I'm thinking, since when is the government responsible for ensuring that the social structure in a society is maintained? I'm asking the question, really.
So who should it be?
I'm asking, what is the role
of government in maintaining a social structure?
Yes, what is their role? What is our role? Because
Khalid?
Yes.
Ali, do you have a response to this?
Yes. First of all, let's see. I mean, the government has a responsibility over everything. We cannot take away the government from anything in the country. They are the largest entrepreneur in the country. They're the largest entity in the country. They are the largest social institution or social organization in the country. We even have a ministry or a department of social services. So this falls squarely within a government mandate to ensure, not just mental health or mental wellness, but also SGBV is addressed. But having said that, I agree with the last caller that we also have a responsibility as a people, and we can't just be pointing fingers at the government all the time. The question is, what role do we have as different sectors? For example, as civil society, we have a duty. We owe it to our country to play our role. Awareness like this we are doing. The media, as SpiceFM and Standard Group, you're playing your part. And, everyone else has a responsibility. And we can only succeed if we all pull together. I fully agree we cannot just leave this to the government alone. But if the government plays its part, we play our part, then we will be able to conquer this monster we call SGBV.
Besides calling for the government to take action and, for example, coming up with enforcement of the law, establishment of safe houses, what else do organizations such as yours do to go into the community and address the issues? I know you were talking about, for example, the examples that you were giving us in Kilifi and the Boda Boda and seeing what can be done. But you see, beyond that, like what City is saying, there's a breakdown of our social structure. The fact that we are getting to a point as a family unit, then you are going through economic hardship, should not mean that violence erupts.
Or the unit disintegrates.
Or that you go and report to this other level, which is the Wazirs, and the Wazirs tell you, this one we can't touch. Go and deal with it yourself. How do you organizations deal with us, address this kind of things of bringing back those structures in society?
Yeah, a good question, and I think this is a challenge to us also as civil society to play our part. I know, for example, we were involved last year in COVID-19 relief food distribution in the entire Mombasa County, and this was actually a way of trying to cushion families from the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. We worked very closely with Red Cross, of course, with the county government of Mombasa and the private sector who contributed or donated food stuff, and we were able to distribute this food. I remember, if you recall the story, I think it was well covered by KTN and Standard Group, the mother who was boiling stones. We were able to, again, follow up on that, get the authorities to work on that issue, and we are now working with the group on the ground, Sisters for Justice, and this woman is in the process of acquiring his own home now with support and care for her and her family. But like I said, it's not enough. Even for us, we know that what we've done is very little. If the statistics are anything to go by, it means we are not doing enough. And not just the government, but us as civil society, as media, as the general public, we need to do more, because we can't have a 900% increase in SGBV in 1 year. We can't have over 5,000 cases reported nationally, a 36% increase nationally. We can't, have women, people like they're banned as witches in the guise of being witches, not that they're witches. The guise of being witches, because their children or their family want to take over the land, to till the land, for them to be able to support themselves economically. But this woman is still there, and they're saying, what do we do? So let's, just come up with allegations that she's a witch. You burn her alive. Just imagine, because you just want to take away her land. So these issues are out there. I agree we need to do more as civil society. But, collectively, if we all do a little, then we will do a lot.
Where actually I believe you do have a valid point when you talk about the responsibility of the government is, one, in understanding the precarious nature of any agricultural activity. Because anything that is predominantly dependent on the vagaries of, say, climate or climate change or the weather is usually likely to come against some strong headwinds. And perhaps teaching pastoral communities a little diversification in the way they live, or getting them to understand other ways of eking a livelihood. Yes, this is something that the government actually can do and actually should do. Because in all honesty, if you're talking about, for instance, let's talk about, say, the larger conflict that we often witness in Tana River. If something as simple as getting people to understand that the livelihood can be earned differently, I'm not saying it is a perfect solution, but it then prevents a situation that comes in, year out. If you have a drought, there'll be conflict, there'll be people dying, there'll be people moving out. If there's conflict, or if there's a famine in some parts of the country, you know very well they're going to need food aid. And yet, we have an organization that deals with research into the very, very things that can grow in some of these semi-arid areas. Yeah. Again, I'm simply saying, you're right, Khalid, when you say the government effort must be considered. However, the point I was making, and this is what I want to harp on, is this. Even without COVID, we already had a serious societal problem of what we call our social systems breaking down. The example I'm giving is that at the level where we seem to have accepted as a society that corruption is okay and it is normal, at the level where, and it's manifested even in schools where children don't think it is a big thing for them to cheat in an exam. It's just something that you do. When we consider it is normal to bribe policemen to let you go when you've committed an offense, which means we no longer think that we should actually be held accountable for the wrongs that we do. So we are now beginning to pay the price. The piper has come calling for a payment. We're paying the price for things we've neglected and we should have done. And now here we are. Now, you as an NGO or NGOs that do what you do you think you have the wherewithal to start turning around this particular tide?
I think we have no choice. It's not about whether we have or not. It's a matter of we have to, we must do it. This is our country. You know, all efforts must be put into this. I totally agree with the social fabric. You know, even before COVID, it was a big challenge. And, you know, if you look at the West, you know, they went through this. We consider ourselves, Kenya, as out of that, what's it called? We are now into the mid-development, is it country? Yeah. So this is a process that we are expected to go through. But the worst is that we are not learning from others who've already gone through this. We brag ourselves to be, you know, the big brother within the region because we are far much ahead in terms of infrastructure, economy, and all that. And in more or less, these developments come with a breakdown of the social fabric, but not necessarily. We can learn from the experiences of others. Malaysia, we can learn from countries such as Singapore. How did they go through this? You know, countries like Malaysia, if you remember, the president was arrested at some point because of corruption, they lost and stuff like this. So how do we learn from countries that are slightly ahead of us so that we don't repeat that? But all said and done, I agree that as a society, we have a big role to play. We are supposed to be like the custodians of public opinion. We air these opinions and we ask people to join in and we mobilize and all that. And it is our responsibility as a watchdog to push the government to do more. So yes, for me and also colleagues in the sector, we need to do better. We need to do more because the statistics are clearly pointing that we are not achieving what we have set out to do. And it's not just us, you know, every sector. I mean, this would have been lovely if this program would have been like for 4 or 5 hours. But, you know, of course, we can't have that because of, media issues and stuff like that. But if we could have more and more of this discussion, you know, we go out to the society, we talk to people, we talk to victims, even the perpetrators, they need to be educated. They need to be told that, you know, you cannot do this. So I fully agree with you. And, I see how we can do better. but then we also ask everyone to, I guess, self-assessments. Do self-assessments and ask ourselves, what can we do better? Even if we save a single life, just a single life, or even just a single act of violence, we will have achieved. And that is what we are hoping, like through this program, we'll be able to do.
I don't want to be a wet blanket, Khalid, but for many Kenyans, they're on survival mode.
It's true.
Yes, and self-reflection will not take a priority.
That's very true, I know. But we just have to ask people to try. I know it's a challenging time. It's very challenging.
Okay.
The other thing that I'm also thinking of is probably we need to look at approach it a bit differently. Instead of throwing a blanket of condemnation on these cases of gender-based violence and sexual-based violence, and looking at, seeking justice and wanting to punish the perpetrator, how about we view it in a different way? So that the society then starts dealing with it from not the issue of, punish, but the issue of address the root causes. We get to a point where we have a conversation as a society, as a community. Like you said, you have these young girls who are going to school. They need to get to school on time. You have these young men who have borders. They're young, the men. They have borders. They give them a ride and they go ahead and ask for payment. And then the end result is these pregnancies. How can we as a community, as a society, talk and address this? Where even if it's a conversation amongst the wazés and the young men and saying, okay, support our girls and this is what you're going to get in return. Instead of saying, civil society has landed and is saying, look at this number of girls, all these girls, they are perpetrators and the perpetrators are the border people, are the border people. We need to see cases in court,
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And instead of punishing, we correct. I think that's what we have now with the prisons. They call themselves a correctional institution, not necessarily a prison. And maybe we can borrow that concept. But the fear is in encouraging people to do more than what they are in terms of violating.
Yep.
As long as we are clear that, maybe for example, in Tana River, you have this, what they call masla. Masla is where an issue has occurred, a child has been impregnated, and then they sit down and they say, okay, we have looked at everything, so our decision is you must marry this young girl. That becomes it. So there are certain cases, like I said, we will encourage that. You remedy the situation, because if you have a 17-year-old who has defiled a 16-year-old, or maybe an 18 or a 19 who has defiled a 16-year-old, so this guy is over 18. So in actual sense, he has committed defilement.
Yeah.
So if you take this guy to court, you jail this person, he's in prison for 5, 7, or maybe even 10 years. This girl is here, she's pregnant, she has nowhere to go to. So in such a situation, you can argue if they are allowed to get married, the man takes responsibility, takes care of the girl, takes care of the baby. The baby now, has a father to take care of. The girl can go back to school, finish her education. So in such situations, you can understand. And you can see how that at the end of the day will be beneficial to not just the victim, but also the perpetrator, instead of taking him to jail.
That's true.
So I agree. Such situations, it can be reviewed on a case-to-case basis. And where we feel that this is going to help, then I agree. That's the best way forward.
Thank you very much, Hussein Khalid, Executive Director of Haki Africa. As we come to the conclusion of the show, listen to today's proverb by Seti.
A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse to the grave.
You get that, Khalid?
I get that. I agree 100%. And I think the fly are Kenyans. And we need to advise us.
We need
Where
advisors.
we are going, we are actually headed to the grave.
We're going to the grave.
Thank you very much, Hussein. Have a lovely day. And thank you for tuning in to the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow, Wednesday. We'll have more conversations, and we'd love for you to join us. Good morning, Kenya's biggest conversation. Coming up at